Good evening. My name is Susan Stevenson. I'm the chair of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation for the Village of Southampton. I'm calling this meeting on August 12th to order. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
I make a motion that we open this meeting on August 12th, the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation.
Second?
Aye.
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 Before we begin, I want to make it clear that I expect everyone, the board and the public, to act and speak with civility during this meeting. Anyone who wants to speak should sign this piece of paper up on the front table. No one may speak until they're recognized by the chair. If you're presenting materials, please place them on this table facing the board so the videographer can pick up the details. Now I'd like to introduce our board for tonight. To my left, Robert Coburn, Christina Redding. To my right, Curtis Highsmith, Jeff Broadleib, our counsel, Bo Robinson, our historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, our videographer, Charlie Styler, and our recording secretary, Antoinette Edwards. Let's get started. First on the agenda, we have to approve the minutes for July 22nd.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes
With
for July
changes.
22nd with changes and amendments.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I was not here, so I abstained.
Okay, it still carries. Next, signs. Number 1, Corcoran Group, 24 Main Street, storefront and awnings. Storefront sign and awnings.
Where do I place these on the table?
Yes, facing
that away
me.
so they can.
Okay,
Would
great.
everyone would
Yes,
like a
we'd love
couple?
to see that.
Great.
Thank you. She needs to stamp something in,
And those-
one of
you can
them.
hand them all to her.
Probably need a couple of these when I come back for the storefront alteration. My name is Chandler Pierce. I'm an architect. Been in private practice for 35 years. I do the vast majority of the work for Corcoran. Corcoran's moving into the space currently occupied by Brown Harris. And so we're looking to change the sign on the front, obviously, from Brown Harris to Corcoran. Brown Harris has a black band with raised metal letters on it, and we're looking to more simplify the whole front elevation, and that will be painting the whole front elevation white, and we'll be using Benjamin Moore.
Right, you have to save this for the next part.
Okay.
We just need to hear about the signs and the awnings.
Okay, so the sign that's going up is to put the Corcoran name in metal letters, and this is an example of the metal letter, and this is full scale that goes up.
Is that tight to the building or on pins? or-
It has to be on pins because that panel that goes across juts out about 3 inches at one point. And so it'll simply, in order for it to go across tightly, it'll do that. And then we're
What will
looking
be the relief from the building?
at the section where it projects out about 3/4 of an inch. And in the other areas, it'll be about 2.5 inches.
Oh, because the building has,
There's a little jog in it.
okay, gotcha, okay.
What about those light fixtures?
It's part of the other application, right?
Yep, part of the other
Oh,
application.
okay, next. Okay, sorry.
And then,
It isn't always.
I know. But I assume the lighting on the front of the building is going to be part of your other alterations.
that's correct.
Okay,
And as far as the awnings are concerned, we're using a black material that has a light color on the underside, and then it would have the Corcoran logo running across the front of it.
Are those pinstripes on the awning?
They're really there just to show angle to it,
Okay.
and so that there won't be striping on it, no.
board members, any objections? Anyone from the public have anything to say about
Would there be
this?
any lettering or decals on the windows? I don't see them in the presentation.
On the door itself, I believe that there is a small name on it.
Is that in here?
Just a small name.
That can come back maybe as an amendment to this when you come back for
Well,
Okay.
he's-
alterations.
Well, that's in this meeting.
Okay.
The alterations are for this meeting. If you want to do that, we're going to have to, it's not anywhere to be seen on these pieces of paper.
Okay. Well, it'll have to be an amendment to this application at some point.
Okay.
Okay,
Something in the record.
so we're only talking about the sign and the awnings. Anyone from the public have anything to say? I have no objection, I think it's
I
handsome.
have-
Anyone else? Motion to approve Corcoran Group 24 Main Street storefront and awnings.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Next, Kwame Latham Shea Kelly Dubin and Quattarano LLP, freestanding sign and lighting. Your name, please?
Stacy Menzer, Hampton Signs.
Go ahead.
So we're proposing moving the wall sign to the ground in front of the building. I believe that you have the renderings there, and adding lights.
Okay, I think that's a terrible idea, and I would not support it. It's in a residential district. It just, to me, it's not acceptable. Anyone else? How's that?
This is a freestanding sign that's going to be positioned on the lawn.
Yeah.
Be
here.
positioned on the lawn very close to the, there is...
Why is there a need for 3 individual lights that are boost down lights?
It's a 8-foot sign.
Okay.
And the wattage on this, the lights is only 25 watts per light. So it's very low wattage.
I think it cheapens the neighborhood. Nobody
I do
else is
too.
doing
I
that.
agree.
That's just really up. I don't understand why that would be acceptable. Anyone else who wants to speak about why it would be, go for it.
My first and biggest concern was that, because it wasn't clear in the application, this is not an additional sign. This is taking the sign that was previously approved to go on the side of the building and put it on posts on the
Exactly.
lawn. And
So this is the only marker on the site for the building.
No, they have other signs.
There's one other sign next to the door, only to indicate which door is theirs. This would be the only other sign.
Do you have,
You're saying that you would not be able to establish any type of illumination to the sign with just one goose down?
With one goose down, it would not cover the entire...
Projecting that, I mean, all you need is a little bit to illuminate the sign, at least the location. I don't think that all 3 need to be on both, sorry, it's on both sides, correct?
It's a one-sided sign.
Both sides.
It's a
So
one-sided
all
sign.
3 are not needed to do the entire sign. I think if you could reduce that to 1, just so you at least have some form of illumination for marker, it will diminish some of the concerns I think boards are going to have with the sign now looking more neon than anything else. It's just going to be very bright. Could you condense that down to just 1 projection to the...
I can ask,
it doesn't alleviate my problems, because I don't think it's appropriate to have a freestanding sign outside a building that's pretty handsome, with other offices in it, and there's residential there. The sign on the side of the building was plenty big enough to see.
we're not using this in addition to that sign.
I
We're using-
understand that, but you know, I don't see other than, I don't understand. For me, it's inappropriate in the place that it is, and I don't know so I wouldn't say yes to it.
I would just say that the building directly across the street has 2 freestanding signs, and across the street diagonally, Fowler's has freestanding signs, all of them much closer to the road than we're proposing this to
can you
be.
show a site, is there a site plan in the application?
There must be one.
Jeff has
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I mean,
You don't have a
a
site.
freestanding sign is not foreign to the village of Southampton.
No, but to office,
Or even
It's
to an
huge.
office space, there are several.
okay,
if you go
well,
down
I
the
object to
web-
it, how's that?
You can object, but I'm just asking specific questions about trying to diminish some of the brightness of this sign so that at least it wouldn't be so, I mean, I don't think it needs that much lighting.
8 feet, yeah, I
To
can't
notify
find, there's
that whether
a
the
markup
patient-
of where it's standing out in the lawn.
Let me ask you a question. If instead of doing 3 goosenecks lights,
Maybe it's
they were
down.
willing to do a strip of LED lighting to light it,
It's still a neon sign. Now it's even more so. There should be a way
There was
to,
a thing that
you-
showed it. but
I
we
think you
don't
can
have that.
achieve all of that with
don't
just
have.
1, like some of the signs here in the village of
I didn't see
Southampton
it
have.
before either.
I'm sorry.
Your name for the record.
My name is Katerina Grinko of Toomey Latham. I'm the attorney working at the firm. I just want to mention
I'm sorry,
that
what's your name?
Katerina Grinko. accumulate them. The office space is in the office district, and the reason we're proposing it is because the current sign, which is on the westerly side of the building, it's not illuminated. It's very dark corner. I often work very late there. You don't see that sign from the road, and because of the building's elevation, we thought it would be a nice idea to put a sign on the lawn there, as other businesses along that road has. Fowler's, the building across the street has a sign right on the corner.
Illuminated?
They're not illuminated, but
Okay.
we could work with your suggestion and maybe put something.
It's also huge, 8 feet. To me, I'm not saying yes to it, that's all I have to say. To me, it cheapens the neighborhood, and it's
Can I ask a
inappropriate.
question on this?
Sure.
Since we already have that sign on the building, right? And it was approved as a building sign.
That's right.
If we moved it to the ground without lighting for now, would that be acceptable?
Not by me.
Nor me as well, Stacy.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying.
So,
They just don't light
Or
it.
to recycle the same sign and just
so
without
if
lighting.
I may state my piece, while there may be other signs in there, I'm not necessarily a fan of freestanding signs. And I was just very quickly reading the ZBA proposal in which Attorney Fife argued that the reason you wanted to move the sign was to have greater visibility because of the distraction of the Long Island Railroad. And I put forward that, one, I don't think it's in the village's best interest to have freestanding signs. Number two, you're a professional firm. Who are you advertising for? Why is there a need for a billboard for a professional firm? So I think on multiple grounds, I would not approve it either. You were approved for a sign on the building, you're a professional firm, the people who are coming to you know where they're going. It's not like somebody's going to pass by and say, ooh, I need an attorney.
Right, but we recently moved. It's our new location. We want the village residents know where we are now. We've been on 51 Hill Street for 20-something years, way before my time, and now we're in a new location.
Yeah, and
we're
I
going to
grew-
stay there for many years. So.
That's all
So-
beside the point.
Again, I think that the signs directly across the street are both professionals, and they're both higher on posts, and they are freestanding signs, again, directly across. So everything on the four corners there, or nothing on the four corners there, is actually residential.
But
One
that
of the
is,
arguments against that, though, is that they're a lot smaller. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the issue, is that you're trying to take the sign off the building and put it on the ground. The building sign being the building sign, the marker sign being something entirely different, and they're reduced for the obvious reason they're just supposed to be a marker sign for your location. I think if you came in with a presentation with a smaller condensed version, rather than just taking that version from the building and putting it as a marker, you probably would have had a more favorable review without the lights, I think the pure reason for the 3 lights is the demonstration of how long and how big this sign is, and that's part of the issue. It's maybe too large for just being a marker sign. If you reduce it, condense it, you won't need various lighting in order for it to illuminate, and you may have a more favorable decision than trying to take that larger sign down.
so at this point, they don't have,
No, you don't have.
You don't have the
You don't have
votes. Where-
photographs
do you
of
want
the
neighboring?
neighboring signs.
I
do you?
don't.
Okay, so my problem with this application was there's nothing in here that indicated this was a relocation of the sign. So frankly, I looked at this and said there shouldn't be a third sign. That was my reaction to it. So I'm willing to go back and look at those other signs and consider it, but without photographs of them. I haven't done that because I thought we were adding a sign
Right.
here. But I agree with the comments about lighting. I don't think a lighted sign is appropriate. You're not going to get customers at night, and people aren't going to come look for you at night.
Would we possibly then request an adjournment so that we come back with a more reasonable proposition? Would the board
You can
consider
request an
smaller?
adjournment anytime you want. Are you requesting one?
That's correct, we are.
Okay. I'll move that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn this application to our next meeting.
Second,
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Written decisions, we have none. Next, driveway gates, non-historic. 1990 Meadow Lane LLC. I have an issue with the paperwork on this, that can I just see that file, please? The affidavit of the LLC names the manager instead of, the requirement is not for the manager. Shareholders, partners, or members of the landowner corporation, partnership, or limited liability company. And that is not the manager, that's a hired person. These are owners. That is not existent, and we have a letter. So as far as I'm concerned, the paperwork is not in order, and I would not be interested in hearing this file.
Can you explain that one more time?
There's an
Because my
affidavit.
Inner Science
Disclosure
handled
affidavit, here.
Yes.
And
My firm didn't handle the filing.
I'm not, I'm just the chair, but I have, forms are meant to be filled out properly. And to me, it's inappropriate. Sure. That's all of it.
Okay.
So if you'd like to fill it out properly and come back, I'd be happy to hear your application.
Daniel Thorpe with LaGuardia Design Group. All right. Well, I guess it's a clerical error on our side. We get it fixed.
Do we vote?
We have a letter from council saying, we should accept that, and I don't accept it. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm
Which letter from what council?
This is
from saying, from Mr. Bennett, from Bailey Larkin, saying, I am of the opinion, based on my review of the operating agreement and all other necessary documents and records, holds that Mark Jennings, an authorized signatory, full power and authority to execute any and all application forms relating to the above referenced matter on behalf of 1990 Meadow Lane LLC. But the affidavit asks for a principal, a person who could be held accountable, not a hired manager.
A member can be held accountable.
Well, that's not what that says, and I'm done doing this.
If I may, people form limited liability.
Please stand up, Mr. Bennett.
John Bennett, the applicant. People form limited liability companies for various reasons, obviously to limit their liability, but also for anonymity. And if you go to Spain or Italy, it's called Societe Anonyme.
Yes, but we're in Southampton.
But you cannot require anything other than what the law requires me to give you.
Our affidavit names who can be on that affidavit.
And that is what I have given you, and I've given
No,
you my legal
you've
opinion. that that's
designated
sufficient.
someone as
Do you have a law degree? Do you have a differing legal opinion?
Please sit down, Mr. Bennett.
No, I'm not going to sit down.
I'm not going to be insulted.
No, well,
I have a job to have this.
You don't have the
Please
right to
be
make
quiet.
legal opinions.
Please sit down.
No,
Sit
I'm
down.
representing the applicant. I'm not going to sit down. You don't have the right to make legal opinions.
I
do.
have the right to
suggest
run
you
this
ask your
meeting
counsel.
as I see fit, and that application, that affidavit is not filled out properly.
Based on what? Are you knowledgeable about the limited liability
I'm not
corporation?
going to discuss
Are
it with you.
Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean not going to discuss it? You have to discuss it.
I have discussed it.
You
I'm
no,
finished.
you have to discuss it. Are you
I'm
conversant
warning
with
you,
the
Mr. Bennett, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Are you conversant with the tenets of the limited liability corporation law of the state
I
of New
am
York?
conversant with the the required people who are on that, who are supposed to be disclosed. One person, and that person is not mentioned. No
And a
manager
limited
is
liability
mentioned.
company operates generally by its
I
manager,
don't-
which may or
my
may not
job-
be a member also.
That's up to, you are not identifying that
I
person
don't
as
have
a
to,
member.
under the law of the state of New York.
Council.
Council,
If you feel the meeting is out of order, you can adjourn the application. to the
I'm
next
adjourning
meeting.
the application of,
Can
Wait a
I
minute,
ask a
can you-
separate
other people
procedural
be
question?
heard?
Yes.
We need affidavits of mailing and posting for gate, correct? Do we have those? They're not in the file. We may
That's a
not be-
totally separate matter. If
Right.
they're not in the file,
he's
they're not
trying
in the
to
file.
speed it up for the next time.
There's no affidavit of posting and mailing?
I was asked to write a letter of opinion. If there's no affidavit of posting and there's no affidavit of mailing, that's a different matter. That's a
Okay,
different
but I
matter.
am asking that when you return,
Yeah. I fear that,
And we'll take that under
Yeah.
advisement.
yeah, that the associate from Inner Sciences may be stuck in traffic. It's unlike him to not be here. He probably would be
we can't
bringing the
even,
affidavit.
you know what, we shouldn't have
Don't
even
have an affidavit
started.
of
We don't have
posting or
jurisdiction.
mailing. There's no
Just fair
jurisdiction.
warning.
He can't take that with him as part
We
of
have
the
that
file.
piece of paper back. I
Yes.
suggest they look at it carefully.
That's a separate matter. If there's no affidavit of mailing and no affidavit of posting, I would agree
Next.
with Mr. Coburn and Mr. Robinson. So just-
Are we adjourning this?
You have no parent.
No, there's no, it's just, we can't hear it.
You have a colleague who may be arriving. Should we put it aside in case
No.
he arrives with affidavits?
Let's move on.
We're moving on. Next, public hearings, non-historic. Paraj and Leah Yoganich, 169 Elm Street. These are new plans? Okay.
These are the smaller copies.
Thank you. There we go.
We were in front of the board. Oh, CEO Liu Architect. I'm the architect for 169 Elm Street. We were in front of the board last time, and the board voiced concern about the designs, and we made a lot of changes. And I'm just going with the easy one first. The easy one is Mr. Coben was concerned about the chimney and the flat roof. Those were taken it out. It's gas fireplace, direct vent, no flat roof. And then the major concern that the board have is that we were pushing out on the south side 4 feet all across front and back. And we decided that we're gonna not to push out in the front at all, and just a little bump out in the back, which is 2 feet. And it's 30 feet behind the house, and it's 1-story bump out instead of this is what we proposed before. This is what we proposed before. That's like 4 feet bump out here. And then we are proposing now just like a 2 feet, 1-story. And this is the existing, this is the proposed, so for ease of comparison.
You have an application pending in the ZBA. Could you explain that to us? That should have been in the file.
Yes. We are asking for 5-foot setback for the garage in the back instead of 10 feet.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We want to swing around.
Well, I think it's an improvement. Zach?
Yeah, I think the roof lines are a big improvement because there was a lot of different shapes and angles and types, hips and gables. This is, however, a lot of density on this
Side.
village lot, you know. And obviously, you know, which is why you're looking for relief, so that you can get the turnaround to the garage.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that where that density sort of shows itself is in those side elevations, so
Right.
how long the house is.
Is it longer than on either side? There are similar houses. How far do you go beyond their length?
It's, you know,
It is longer.
How much longer,
But
do you know?
I don't know.
Because I can't go and
But the house right now, you know, with the shed in the back, so we have a shed that we're gonna take it down. That goes all the way to the end. To here, we're actually shorter than what is there now. But of course, the shed is 1 story.
okay. I see what you're
And what
saying.
exactly is that very large porch, that large covered porch, which I guess doesn't count in terms of habitable space, but visually in terms of the length of the house
In the back?
in the back.
But you're
that gives another-
demoing those first story
Yes,
rear
yes.
finishes, correct? So those are going to
Yes.
be demoed.
This is going to be taken down.
But
So it's
then they-
actually the length of the house is smaller than existing.
No,
The house is not smaller,
No,
it's
'cause
because we are going to take down
Yeah,
the
but
shed.
this exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shed is,
So these would be-
Well, the form of it, yeah. It's
Yeah.
separate space, but there's shed
so
space.
this,
The sheds are directly attached now to the house?
it's not attached, but
Not attached.
it's
And with
quite,
those-
Near.
it's very close.
Within inches, or
And they-
about
but they were-
how far away would
were
you say it
those,
is?
Maybe like 3 feet.
were those legal sheds?
Yes, I have COs.
Okay.
But the fact that the present house steps down
And this one doesn't,
kind of
are you all right?
modifies the sense of the scale of it, whereas now you're raising the entire footprint of the house up. I don't think the open porch at the back compensates for that, just because the length of both of these side walls and the height at 2 full stories.
Will you see that porch?
No.
I'm looking at it now.
But they've raised and filled in the house above,
That's the point.
and so it doesn't step down to get to the porch,
The
correct?
way the
So there's a
existing
big
does.
flanking facade on the south and north, which we didn't have before.
I literally had to drive over here to see that step down.
Yeah, but how about the people who live next door? I mean, it shouldn't be a wall of a building, should it?
Disagree. Are there any here to say
So,
Well, I'm allowed to have an opinion.
if I may
of course.
comment, I'm neither advantaged nor disadvantaged because I wasn't here last week when you first presented. So I'm looking at this with virgin eyes, and my reaction is exactly Zach's. It's too much in terms of siting and mass. The fact that you have to go to the ZBA for a variance in order to make it work is indicative of that there's just too much on that property. So on a basis of siting and mass, I would not vote for this. I would much prefer, rather than maxing out the GFA as you have done, which is perfectly your right, but I don't have to vote for it, that there's probably 10% or more that can be cut back that would make this more palatable, and that if you did something to soften the elevation going east to west, that it might make it more palatable. Again, building on what Zach was saying.
the ZBA relief is for a setback for
I fully
structure?
Only
understand.
for the garage.
Right, I
not
fully
for the house.
understand, and our charge has to do with siding on the property. And when I look at this, I see siding that presents a massive structure that I think is inappropriate and in disharmony with the neighborhood.
I didn't quite understand about the siding. What does it mean by?
The site.
Where it's located.
The site, S-I-T-E, site. The buildings on the property, how they're situated as in site, okay? We have jurisdiction over the siting and the massing of properties. So in my opinion, the siting of the buildings and the mass of the building that you're creating is in excess to what I would view as harmonious to the neighborhood. And that's it.
Well, I guess the siting part is kind of a little bit hard because I have no other places but in the back.
Come on now.
And
See,
it
you know, every architect comes in here and says, I have no choice. You're familiar with the term Hobbesian choice. There's always a choice. You don't have to do anything. They can stay in that house and do nothing and live with it. So everybody has a choice, okay? We have an obligation to vote as our judgment suggests we vote, or ours. Different board members may have a different opinion. My view is that the siting and the massing is too intensive to be in harmony with that neighborhood. Simple, that's it.
Could I have the opinions of other board members?
I think that it should step down when you get going back there, to the back. You also, you have a shed, a garage, you've asked for a variance to get all this stuff placed on the
The
lot.
sheds are coming down, right?
No, then they're adding a shed,
It's a
right?
tiny one.
I don't care. You got, look at the site plan.
Where's,
the
It's an 8 by
grass?
10 versus right now
This is just a
271.
giant mass, in a big garage, too. No?
I don't see that on this survey.
Oh, here, on this survey, though, do you have that?
This is the new site plan.
Okay.
In the,
I didn't get the survey in time. The surveyor is working on it.
So the first page of what you just
Oh.
received.
so it's,
So my thoughts are, you made some improvements on the main house, which I appreciate. I share some of the concern on that southern facade, although having driven by the house a couple days ago and looking at it on plan, there's something awkward about the stepped-down second story as it is right now. I don't know if it was an addition to the original house, but
it was.
it sort of stands on its own in a slightly awkward way. So I for one don't mind the extension of the second story on the west side. But
south?
I would be much more comfortable if the length of that house form, forget the shed, the house form, if it didn't increase. Because I do think right now it's a pretty visually full lot. And I would feel more comfortable if it was entirely within the footprint of the house as it exists today, other than the bump out, 2-foot bump out. I'm fine with that. And I do think that the shed and the garage and the pool add a lot of density. You know, we're trying to keep some breathing space and some visual breathing space. I think the code asks for harmoniousness in that neighborhood. Typically, there are, even on some of the tighter lots, some setbacks and some graciousness to how structures sit on the property, and I agree with some of Jeff's comments there, that it feels full. Not particularly in favor of the shed in that regard. I understand the need for the variance on the garage. For me, if the house were shorter and sat on its current footprint, other than the bump out to the south, you might have my vote.
I didn't quite understand. Are you looking at the smaller shed? You don't like the smaller shed?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very full property right now, and you're looking visually to increase the fullness of the buildings on the property in a neighborhood that, while it is tight and small lots, most lots don't look this full. Most of them have greater
Grass.
spacing and setbacks and breathing area. So it's a lot of density going into a relatively narrow, thin lot.
So you're okay with the 2-foot bump out on the side?
I am, yes.
And,
That's much better than the one that was there proposed before.
And you're okay with the roof extending?
I'm okay with the roof extending, but I'm not okay with the length that you've proposed it to. I think extending the total east-west length of the building, separate from the sheds, which aren't attached, is just adds to the visual mass.
Okay. Ms. Redding, do you have
I
any?
agree, I'm sorry. This is a lot on this lot, and it's just, it's too much.
If you reduce the porch, which in itself adds so much living space, I know it's open space, but because it is a covered porch, it does add to the linear portions of the house, and it stretches the house out and make it look. I think if you reduce the porch, there's other ways you could have to grade living habitable space where you're not, showing it or demonstrating it in terms of the overall facade of the building. Whether it be at grade or some type of porch or something, but I think because of that extended covered porch, everyone's just seeing this long, which ends up happening on long, narrow lots, accordion homes that get stretched out. With that said, having the shed, which I'm sure is whether it's for storage or something, maybe there's a way to work that into the fabric of the garage, so you don't add another. Just another feature, basically in your family space, which is right in front of the pool.
Well, we can reduce the shed, but we cannot really need it. I can reduce it probably to half of it, because that is the only place I can put my pool equipment. Because
So sorry, you're using the
Inside?
pool, you're using the shed to put your pool equipment.
Inside the shed?
So it's,
Well, you should have said that in the first place, though.
But, yeah, I can reduce it. I don't have to do
Okay.
this big, because I did talk to the contractors. They like it bigger, of course, because it's easier for them to work on it. Then I can talk to them again to make it the minimum size that's
What a-
possible.
What about, I mean, it is that the length of the house
I will
sort of
go,
obliterates the entire plan, as far as I can tell, because it just exacerbates all the crowding.
I understand. I will go back to the
Okay.
homeowner and discuss.
I think a back covered porch is great, so can't you, I don't know why people feel they have to have, 20 bedrooms in a new house on Elm Street, but maybe they do. So maybe you can, you'll have to figure it out. Where's the parking on this property?
Oh, parking, it's in the back. So you have, this is 2 in the garage, 2 outside is,
And then there's
It's
a
allowed.
turnaround.
5 bedrooms? Is that what it is?
Yes.
And so the garage holds how many cars? 2?
Where's the building permit?
1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 car parking space.
Where? By the garage?
We have 4
5
bedrooms. Yes. This is how they count it. You can have 2 in the garage and 2 outside the garage. So that's 4. But we have 4 bedrooms. We don't have
4
5.
parking places.
Yeah, right.
I just have one quick question that might be relevant if you're redesigning or reconsidering. On
Just have to
page
look at the survey to see that it's just,
where
it's so terrible.
you show the proposed rear elevation. The way I'm reading this, I may not understand this clearly, is that the pyramid, that the proposed middle section of the house on the north side pierces that.
Yeah.
Was that
There is a
a
code.
relief for that?
There is
or
a
was
code that says if the addition is under the pre-existing house and it's also under the maximum allowed, they do not have to conform to the pyramid law. I have a copy of the code.
That's why that's got by me. I was not aware of that condition.
Yeah. If you want a
Okay.
copy, I can give it to you.
No, I just noticed that
We can work on it a different way.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
so,
But we're gonna strive.
okay,
to-
so you're asking for an adjournment until our next
I
meeting?
want to just clarify a little bit, because I
Yes.
didn't quite understand what you're saying about the porch step down, that I didn't quite understand
That
you.
there's a wall on the south exposure that goes all the way to the porch. So there's, like, in a tenement would be, that goes across. There's no, in the previous iteration of this building, it stepped down to the sheds, but at least came down. There weren't a 2-story, you're adding a 2-story addition all the way along till you get to the porch, correct?
Correct.
So that presents a facade to the neighboring house, and also, I don't know how, I couldn't figure out how far, much farther back, without going in there, which I didn't do. But it presents like a big wall, and then it goes on with the porch. I think the porch, to me, is a nice idea, especially since it's by the pool, but it's up to your client. But somehow there's no air. It's just a giant facade on that side.
Understood.
And also, I would urge you to look at the situation in terms of how much is on this relatively small lot when you look at a site plan, the newer site plan. There's between the driveway, the garage, the shed, the pool, and the elongated house, there is no breathing room whatsoever. Is that, would you say? Yeah. And I think that board members are having a problem with that, and I'm one of them. Okay? So are you,
I'm requesting adjournment.
I make a motion that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn the application of Haraj and Leah Young-Bonovich.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
next?
Has something I wanted to hand out. Could I put this application?
Oh, wait,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Okay,
Yes, wait. So
very sorry.
Motion
May I
to
make a motion to reopen
reopen
the
this
hearing on
Haraj
Young-Bonovich?
and Leah, yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry,
I'd
Barbara.
just like to submit this letter.
Name and
Thank you.
Did you get a name?
I'm sorry.
Did she say who she is?
You want to say your name? Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I did. My name is Barbara Wilson, and I'm the neighbor directly on the opposite side that would be looking at all those lovely windows. Okay?
So this is a letter, without going into detail, a letter in support or a letter in objection?
A letter in objection.
Okay, thank you.
Expresses a concern about the increase in number and size of windows along the south facade of the house.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
She does say she appreciates the reduction in the mass of the addition proposed, but concerned that the addition of a second story over the existing one-story extension at the back of the house will loom over Ms. Wilson's backyard. This is from her
okay.
counsel.
So now we have to have another motion to adjourn Paraj and Leah Young Bonich at 169
So
Elm
moved.
At the
Street.
request of the applicant.
So moved.
At the request of the applicant.
At the request of the applicant.
So moved.
Aye.
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 Second.
Yeah.
Next, 71 Flying Point Management LLC, 71 Flying Point Road.
Good evening for the applicant, Michael Selensky. I'm an attorney from Watermill. I'm joined by Chuck Thomas, the architect on this project.
We should probably go back to this file. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. We went, after the last board meeting, we went back and made some changes that I think are in line with the board's suggestions as it relates to consistency of the windows on the one side and getting them more in a symmetrical pattern, as well as dealing with the glass structure in the corner. I'll let Chuck go through those.
Good evening, Board. At our last meeting, we discussed there was
Big
a
window, right.
Yes, there was a dormer over these windows, and these windows were actually connected through floor. And we suggested, the suggestion was made that we separate them and remove the dormer. We actually sketched out an idea when we were here, and it seemed like a reasonable solution at the time. So I cleaned that up. And then there was another valid point on the side elevation about the symmetry of the windows. I realigned downstairs office window to be in line, and I centered another bathroom window so we have symmetry on that gable end.
It looks much better.
Is your client pleased with these changes, comfortable with them?
He was comfortable at the end.
Okay.
I was driving around in the North Fork, and I came across one of those big windows like you had,
Yes, ma'am.
and I think it wasn't that pleasant to look at, so.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Very diplomatic.
Yes. We all live in different houses.
Yes.
My comment is I appreciated the dialogue we had last time, and I appreciated there were a couple other things we discussed, but I don't think these were the two that came up most, and I think you've been very responsive to them.
Thank you, sir.
I have no questions or comments and no problems.
Anybody else? Anyone from the public want to comment on the redesign? Are we in favor?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application for 71 Flying Point Management LLC as revised.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Next, Roger Memorial Library, 91 Cooper's Farm Road, construct one-story addition.
Hi.
You have affidavits for us?
Yes, I do.
Let's see. Good. Thank you. Big, into it.
Your name, sir?
Michael Shiano with InterScience, for the applicant. All of these photos we had submitted as part of the application. These are just a little bit larger view in the event that
Well, at least
for the
some of
camera.
us have been to the library, actually.
because so much of the addition is going to match the existing, I thought this would be a little helpful. So Michael Shiano from
InterScience Research Associates on behalf of the library. The library proposes a one-room, 228.9 square foot addition to the existing library with an adjacent 9-foot wide patio that will be covered by a trellis. The addition will be located within the crux of the L shape of the library, and so it will not be visible from Windmill Lane or from Cooper's Farm Road.
Bless you.
Bless you.
The purpose of the proposed addition is to create a snack area for library patrons. The entrance for the snack area will be inside the first set of automatic doors at the main entrance to the library and will only be open during normal library hours. In photo 5 that I had submitted with the application, I had provided kind of a view of this entrance here to further show that the addition cannot be seen from any of the surrounding roads. The architectural details of the proposed addition will match the existing library building, which includes the stained wood cedar shingles for the siding, the gray asphalt timberland shingles for the roof, the windows and doors with white trim and grills will match the existing white vinyl coated windows that also have a white wood trim. And the white posts that support the trellis will match this existing white wood posts that you see when you enter the library. The trellis beams will also be white. They will be white cedar, well, cedar painted white. The addition received site plan approval from the Village Planning Board on July 2nd, 2018, and it's valid for 2 years, so we have until next July before it expires. We also secured approval from the Suffolk County Health Department for the addition on June 8th, 2019. No additional sanitary system improvements were required. As part of that, the Health Department found that the existing system was sufficiently sized for this addition. I have a description of the proposed use, if you would want it.
Just interested in how it looks from the outside.
Okay. Right, that's what I figured. I just wanted to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it goes into that crux there. It looked like, from what I saw in the plans, that you basically fill the first bay up until the first dormer with that form. So that was the dimensioning of the space from north to south?
Correct, yes. Take out that.
Hold on. When you first go in, it's,
Just to the left?
yeah.
and-
And so it's sort of a little crowded in there.
So as you enter the library here, which is this entrance right here, and right before you get to, after you get through the main doors, that's how you enter the main entry, the main part of the cafe here. And then there's, you can access the deck from from either these sliding doors or these sliding doors. But you can't get any of like the food or any of that without going inside.
Okay. I don't have a problem with this.
I have no problem.
Anybody?
Actually happy you're doing this. I think we need a vehicle for, my daughter goes through the library all the time. I start using the library, especially Cooper Hall, more for some of our meetings and some of my nonprofit activity. I'm just so happy that the building is showing itself to be more utilized in the village, so, thank you.
That's great. Appreciate that, and I know it's not our purview, I would just say, I see a lot of kids running across that intersection to go get something at Rite Aid right now.
Yeah.
When they want a snack, and it's not safe.
Great.
So, besides the architecture, I agree, it's good for the community.
Anyone from the public want to comment on this? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application of Rogers Memorial Library for a one-story addition for a cafe.
I second that.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I may have come here too late for the 1990 Meadow Lane entry gate application.
We have an issue with I have an issue with the affidavit.
Okay.
And we didn't have affidavit.
And
Right,
there's no person-
I have them, I apologize, I was looking at the notice, not the actual agenda, for the order. Should I submit the affidavits that I have?
You can
to
submit
open it
them
and then-
anytime, right? Yeah, you can submit them
Okay,
to her.
I will just grab that, just one.
Okay. Next, public hearings historic. Thomas?
McDonald's, does
Oh, it's not on,
Yeah, you have,
it's not on the,
you have the agenda there.
sorry, McDonald's. So this somehow was dropped off the agenda.
Yes.
Actually,
It was never actually put on.
needs to be stamped.
Let's see first.
They're like in that.
Well, Mr. Roscoe is passing out
In the back.
drawings.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
No, that's why we did the renovation we did when I was on the board. To look more like.
Can you stand in front of the table so I can hear you?
I actually can't, because then I can't see my notebook, so I'm
Sorry,
going to speak
but I
loud
can't
enough.
record you when you're standing that far away from the
That's just
microphone.
ugly.
So I'm going to speak loud enough so you
Dude.
can hear me.
It won't help. Please stand in front of the table.
Why don't you bring the podium over, and that way you can use that as a
Yeah,
podium right next,
I'm sorry,
well, there's a podium right
my
there.
vision's gone a few years ago, so.
You want to use the podium?
No, it's all right.
Sure?
I'll just hold it up.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairwoman Stevenson, honorable members of the Architectural Review Board, Keith Brown, Brown and Altman, LLP, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm here tonight with respect to McDonald's USA LLC's application for site plan approval in connection with its renovations of the existing McDonald's restaurant and the conversion of a tandem drive-through into a side-by-side drive-through at the property. Now, prior to today's
Did you
hearing...
say a site plan
Site
review?
plan, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not doing site plan.
We're just doing the,
Just ARB.
what it looks
Okay.
like.
I stand corrected. Prior to today's hearing, a hearing notice was sent certified mail and regular mail to all owners of properties within a radius of 200 feet of the property in compliance with Village Code. In addition, prior to today's hearing, a hearing notice was posted on the property in compliance with Village Code. I've submitted both the mailing, the affidavits of mailing and posting on the forms provided by this board, executed today, August 12th, 2019. Just in terms of the history, the property is presently approved with the McDonald's restaurant. Village records indicate that it's been improved with the restaurant since circa 1970. As such, this fast food restaurant has been operated at the property for approximately 48 years. On April 25th of this year, the Village of Southampton Zoning Board of Appeals approved McDonald's application to permit additions to the existing restaurant and a parking variance pursuant to decision dated December 16th, 1999. Further, on June 2nd of this year, the Village of Southampton Planning Board approved McDonald's site plan application pursuant to the review and comments of the village planning consultant Nelson Pope and Voorhees. The hearing tonight is the last step in the process prior to McDonald's receipt of a building permit. Accordingly, McDonald's has endeavored to anticipate this board's potential comments regarding the proposed design so as to minimize the likelihood of additional hearings. By way of background, as you are no doubt aware, the property is zoned highway business and is currently developed with the McDonald's restaurant and associated parking facilities. The subject property is bounded on the east by North Sea Road. At the north, west, and southern lot lines, the property is bounded by other commercial uses,
including Southampton Tire Center, the People's United Bank, and the Hampton Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing. The existing building is 2,380 square feet. The applicant proposes to convert the existing tandem drive-through lane into a side-by-side drive-through and add 2 small expansions to the rear of the property, totaling only 287 square feet, to provide more dining space and additional kitchen area, and in order to bring the restaurant more into ADA compliance.
All right, we just really want to hear your proposal for the outside of the building, okay?
So the 2 bump outs to the rear, there's 150 square feet to the dining room and 170 square feet to the kitchen for the drive-through pay window. The actual number of seats inside the restaurant.
Sir, we want to hear about what it's going to look like.
Yes, with all due respect, it's relevant. I'm almost there. Just bear with me.
Okay.
So the number of seating is actually being reduced because in order to make the site more ADA compliant, there needs to be more aisle width in the dining room. So the existing seats are 55 inside is going to 45, while the number of parking spaces is being reduced from 51 to 45. Importantly, at the outset of this application, we strongly advise McDonald's to augment their standard aesthetic guidelines and to design this particular restaurant in Southampton Village to be more in keeping with the unique and recognizable architecture found throughout the Hamptons. Our office provided McDonald's with several examples of existing properties for reference. As will be discussed in a few minutes by Mr. Alan Roscoe of Core States Group, the design and materials selected as part of McDonald's application ensure that the building will continue to respect and fit in aesthetically with the surrounding community. The uses of the neighboring parcels are in harmony with the continuation of the historic use of the property as a fast food restaurant, together with a modified drive-through and expanded footprint. Respectfully, the subject property fits in well with its neighboring community and has done so for more than 48 years. The redesign of the site by McDonald's is intended to make the restaurant more compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, enhance the appearance of the restaurant by eliminating the dated roof with acrylic strips of lighting, and provide for better on-site vehicle circulation, and to offer McDonald's customers an improved and more convenient dining experience. With that, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Alan Roscoe. Alan?
Thank you. Alan Roscoe from Core States Group. We're architects, engineers, and constructors. We represent McDonald's here in the Northeast. We've been working with Attorney Brown here on Long Island, upstate New York, Western Connecticut, and the like. So we've got several projects that we can kind of use to provide tools to present this project to you. This is unique. We have a fairly standard program that McDonald's sets out for us, but because of the strength of the ARB and the character of the community, we've opted to modify the appearance of the restaurant, maintaining some items and augmenting others. In this case, we're choosing to retain the color, the overall color of the restaurant. We're calling it, the closest chip we have, I think, is Navajo beige. So that the color will be maintained. We're proposing to eliminate the full mansard, provide a half mansard roof, along with the additions that Attorney Brown mentioned. That'll tend to elongate the restaurant as you're looking at it from the side profile. This is a fairly small restaurant in this program, so to make it look larger and more compatible with some of the other buildings, for instance, the tire service and the likes, the tendency was to make the side facades look longer. So some of the key elements of the program are the brand walls, which are intending to identify the front and side entries. This is a concrete tile product that will be drawing your eye to the doorways and the main windows. We're going to do multi-pane glass. The mansard will be architectural shingle. We've maintained a clapboard look to go along with the colonial style here in Southampton. And again, the colors are neutral. Some of the overall goals of the program are to make the lighting less prominent, so hence the light bars will be gone from the mansard portion of the roof. We'll have, I guess there's a change that we heard about recently about no internally illuminated signs, so we'll have to make that change. But we'll provide the goosenecks or the downlighting that's consistent with code.
So I just would interject there, just, we previously submitted a material sample board that you have
We have that.
in your file. Also, we are not changing the location of the doorways or any of the windows. And in terms of the lighting that Alan just spoke about a second ago, the site plan fully comports with the village's lighting ordinance, and part of making it in compliance was getting rid of those dated
Right.
1980 acrylic
You're
lighting
eliminating a door in the front, correct?
Are we?
There's a pair of doors existing on the front now, but yeah, the doorway locations are not really changing, is what the,
Yeah.
Doesn't the front currently have two doorways?
2 doors.
yes, that's what,
And that, what I'm seeing has one, unless I'm missing something. So that would be an elimination of one door.
yes, but what I'm trying to say is the entry location is really not changing at the restaurant.
I understand. I just heard the statement that the
Yeah.
doorways weren't changing, but they are. But I understand, I hear what you're saying. Okay.
So you're saying that none of the signs will have any backlit illumination, it will not be any neon signs, no halo sun, anything. You're looking to have projective lights at the lettering,
100%. Right.
goose down is facing and projecting towards the lettering. And the letters that are on the building now, in size, dimensions, style, font, will match what you're proposing now, or are you adding or increasing the lettering?
We're not increasing any lettering.
Yeah, we're
I'll defer
actually,
to you.
yeah, we're actually reducing
Reducing.
signage area, and
Yeah.
what we're presenting, they're internally lit signs, but they're very opaque, so it's very soft lighting. We've provided. as
Sorry,
part of
say
this-
that one more time?
The signs, the lighting is very opaque, so this is like a frost white
That's
color
not
on the
allowed.
So
McDonald's.
they'll illuminate it.
I
Yeah.
was just saying, they're presented on this drawing as illuminated,
Okay.
it's internally illuminated.
He is aware.
We are just made
Yeah.
aware recently that, we cannot have that.
Right.
But in terms of the overall volume and number of signs, we're only proposing the two, what we call the arch logo, the golden arches, and the one word mark, which is the McDonald's name on the front.
Right, so we're reducing signage area overall, and we're reducing the light impact as well. So we've provided lighting studies as part of the site plan approval process, showing that we're reducing lighting levels overall on the site with this proposal.
Is that also the front markers that's coming into the driveway? That sign going to be changed as well?
The monument sign and the directional signs are proposed to remain.
Yeah, we're not
Supposed to remain.
We're not touching those.
Yes.
Oh, that's not unusual.
And the other signage would be ordering equipment, which, we can
Right.
go into more detail if you'd like, but,
Does this application include the request for signs?
Not
Just
that
the
I know
building,
of.
well, the building signs, right?
No, I think they have to
included in
see
the
that
application?
separately.
It does mention signage, replacement
Oh,
of
okay.
We went back and forth
signage,
several times.
misspelled, but
It is part of this application.
Okay.
I made clear of that.
You might want to put this down on the table also. I find.
I got one more.
That's it. Yeah, sure. Would you like one of these, you guys?
So as Keith mentioned, just the overall program, this is modernization of the brand. It's ADA-driven, and it's drive-through optimization-driven as well.
The color of the facade, the fake,
the hardy board.
yeah, whatever you call that.
Well, there's this.
Yeah, that.
And then there's.
How come it's so yellow? Is that what you're proposing, that
This-
yellow color? Yeah,
On the sample, yes, it's Navajo beige.
uh-huh. You see a lot of that over there on North Sea Road?
It's there now. Yeah, we're trying to match the paint color that the existing restaurant has.
Right, but,
They actually call it Navajo yellow?
yeah,
Navajo-
beige.
Navajo
Forget
beige.
yellow,
Beige,
Curtis.
It's,
Well,
it's a neutral, it's not a yellow.
Yeah,
okay.
but it's unique. I can tell you.
It's
we basically
McDonald's-y.
have two color choices. and-
Excuse me, yellow is their color, is that correct?
Yeah, but it wasn't, it's not intended to be yellow.
It's
It's
not the
there-
intended to be a
gold, it's not the
beige.
gold
All
bright
right, well,
color.
I find that,
Existing pictures of the building?
yes, we do
I'm
over
sorry.
here, which you probably haven't been paying, didn't pay a whole lot of attention to when you
I
drove
don't
in. I agree,
like
but
going in here.
I was at a meeting where they got the approval for those lights that I've rue the day of, that was approved. the mansard roof, here's where I'm coming from. I don't think there are a lot of mansard roofs in Southampton Village. I don't think that we should be trying to update and improve a building facade by comparing it to Southampton Tire, even though I love Southampton Tire, but that's not really what's going on. There are some residential streets nearby. I think the Navajo beige is anomalous, and is there another choice? Or is that, in these choices of colors, I don't mind the roof color, but I think that yellowy color is a sand, is not really part of Southampton.
So if I may just take each of those in
Yes.
point. It is located in the highway business at the outskirts of the village, just at the outskirts. We didn't try to match it to Southampton Tire. This was an honest effort to try to blend into surrounding properties, but do it in a way that kind of blended what McDonald's needs were, and also to bring in some of the architectural elements that are here found in Southampton. So in terms of the yellowish, we could go back and we could talk to them to see if they have a different color palette that is somewhat lighter if you find that offensive. But, over the time, your consultant can tell you is that it is called Navajo beige. It will patina after some time and bleach because of the sun, so it will become, very much, a lighter beige.
But we're sort of in gray shingle northeast, not Navajo in beige.
Question, do you have, you submitted these photographs. Do you have a copy of these photographs, or?
Yes.
Can I just ask you to go through them and tell me,
Why
just
they're relevant.
explain why they're relevant and tell me how they relate to the design you've given us? What should we be taking away from those photographs?
Well, I think overall, the color scheme, we gave them an idea before the application even got started of, what some sample architecture in the area is. I think the best example is probably the post office right down the block.
No, that is not the best
Don't
example.
take any signs from the post office. It's really a sore subject to this board.
How about
Very little to
across the
say about
street?
it.
There's some shingled houses that are used as offices.
But this is not an office. This is a restaurant.
What about?
There aren't any other restaurants on that street.
Sorry, let me, if I could, and I'll get back to the floor in a sec. Walk through the elements in the design you're proposing here that specifically are, in your eyes, meant to call out Southampton, if you don't mind.
Well, it's the colonial elements. We're
What are
calling
those
this,
colonial elements?
we're calling this contemporary colonial. So we're refining the mansard again, taking off the top portion, so it will eliminate some bulk, and still keep a colonial appearance.
What's colonial appearance about this? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be thick. I don't see, what I see is a fake clapboard product, and clapboards are colonial, but not hardy board.
Well, it's
I'm just not seeing anything in there that's
it's the whole.
The clapboard themselves
Yeah, the
were
clapboards,
used
that's
in
colonial style.
as well as, the divided glass light.
Multi-pane glass and the mansard roof. Several of the buildings in this photo packet have a mansard style to them.
I have two problems with this. First, I see a little bit of that. I think it gets completely overwhelmed by the tile piers, which makes it look like a strip mall in my mind, number one. Number two, I know that there are people who have concerns about this application and the appearance of that property who didn't know this was on the agenda because it wasn't put there until today. So no matter what discussion takes place, I'm going to argue that, or ask for an adjournment of this so that members of the public who I believe want to speak here can come and speak.
It's existing.
Before we
I will-
move on that, let me approach it from a somewhat different aspect. This, and sort of building on your point, is I've seen McDonald's in their repertoire of designs have things that truly are colonial, that truly represent a community. I can't tell you specifically where they are.
Mattatuck.
But I've seen things that look like cottages, and for you with a straight face, and I would not want to play poker with you, to respond to Rob that has elements of colonial, maybe to a modicum it does, but the look, it's strictly contemporary, it's strictly strip mall, and I know without denigrating that, I know you have the capability. I know you can come back to us with a design that really reflects, if you had read it, the architectural guidelines for Southampton. And on that same square footage, on that same plot, you can get your double drive-throughs and whatever, and have a cute, whether it be shingle, but you give something to us that represents the village, and something that McDonald's would be proud of, and that they could showcase. This is really,
Well-
again, please don't take offense.
No,
Pretty run-of-the-mill, and you've even described it as such with some variations, but it truly doesn't represent the village. And I think we have an opportunity, and you have an opportunity, to really build a showcase that's respectful of the community.
Well, let's just start out with a couple of fundamental things. In terms of the applicant itself, it is far greater than the 1980s mansard with the acrylic lighting in it. We would all agree on that, correct?
No.
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 We don't. We took the lighting off.
You enjoy
No.
the mansard?
This isn't the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
No, but I'm trying to understand where we have common ground and where we don't.
I don't
So
think
if-
we have any right now.
Well, I'm
I'd
trying-
say take a drive down
Madam
Route
Chairwoman.
25 in Matatuck, and then
Madam
we can
Chairwoman,
talk.
with all due respect, I'm trying to find out.
Right.
Yes,
So
have you
with-
been to the
what I-
So with
Matatuck
the
one?
What I was
Ma'am,
trying to say...
Excuse me.
No,
what I
I'm
was
running
try-
this show,
okay.
sir.
I'm just
This is my-
asking. The
You are-
gentleman is talking.
Yes, he's on the board.
Right, and so I'm trying to take his point, and I'm trying to expand it. So,
Fine.
So would the board rather have a full mansard roof like what's there now, minus the acrylic lighting? That's what-
This isn't a choice of...
Yes,
We're the architect.
we're asking you. You're not asking us.
Okay, so we have a charge to promote the village and the village's integrity. I think I was clear in what I was saying. Is I know you are capable of building something that looks a lot more like a Southampton residence property than what you presented here. So there's nothing you could say to me that, well, this is a lesser of two evils. It's not a choice.
That was not
You-
my
you-
intention
you-
to pose it like that. I was trying to understand when I asked about the mansard roof with the lighting in it, and then I heard that mansard roof was something that you'd...
This thing.
This is a partial mansard, so I'm trying to understand so that I could go back to
I'll
that
tell you
and figure
what,
out a
so
way to go.
I'll make it easy for you. If you came in here with something that looked like a colonial shingled house
Dutch color.
that happened to be a restaurant, that would be great. But for you to argue that a mansard roof with or without lights is one better than the other, it's, with all due respect, it's not going to sway me. If you came in here with something that looked really, again, now I'm repeating myself, something that looks like a Southampton house that happens to be a restaurant,
Okay, so what I need to do is I can't go back with generalities. I have to go back with specifics.
we can't
We're
design your
not
building.
telling you what to do.
I'm simply asking you a question.
Right.
So,
I'm directing you to go look at the one in Matatuck, and then we can
Yes.
maybe talk.
Shingle, white.
The company must know of it. It must be one of the things they're proud of.
Yes.
That's what I think.
So, my question was, if this clapboard on top was turned into a mansard, would...
No, we are not piecemealing this. You need to come back with another plan.
There's nothing about this plan
Yes,
that I could accept.
that would be palatable to us. We are suggesting that it should be more like, for instance, in the environment around us nearby, the one in Matatuck.
Well, there's some pictures. There's one in Middle Island in the pictures you submitted. There's a Shell station in Bridgehampton that you submitted, which are major national brands that have used real shingles and done them in a, what I consider a true either Cape Cod or colonial form.
See, that's helpful to me, because that I could go back and I could
But
talk to
that's
them
from
about.
your pictures.
From your own pictures.
But when we just talk in generalities, that's not helpful, because Val and I have to get on a conference call
Let's not
tomorrow and
talk.
talk to them about it. So, but the other thing I wanted to mention was that this arcade here, the treatment, Mr. Coburn, is very important to them. And I'll tell you, it's part of their branding in terms, it identifies them uniquely themselves, and it draws the customers, if I may, it draws the customer's eye to where the front door is. So if we were able to do something, do you see that there is the ability to incorporate the arcade?
We're not going to be piecemeal.
Let me respond. I'm sure that a good architect could probably find a way to do it.
Okay.
And by the way, I just, against Charlie's rules, not to use our cell phone, I looked at the Mattituck McDonald's, and before my phone ran out, it's cute, it's beautiful. So, you want something specific? Well, that's about as specific as you can get.
Of what we have.
Well, I was talking in terms of what we have here now.
Right.
So I heard the
You
color
were
palette.
asking for
I heard you.
recommendations, so
I heard you loud and clear. I also,
Yes.
just respectfully point out, in terms of the arcade, it's very important to our client.
Look, there's, as I was saying to see you before, there's certain things that are important to the applicant. At the same time, there are things that are critical to us. So it depends on how important it is
Right.
to get approval. That's a choice that you and your client has to make.
I understand.
The wall that you're speaking of,
Yes.
it's a marker. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create a marker for part of your brand, which will have the M.
Right.
Before it was a big M in the middle marker and illuminated all over the place in the 80s. Now you're saying that this is your new
Yes. Right. Yes.
switch over, and you're saying that this is what people know you in terms of your brand,
Right.
based on that wall. What I would say is that I would take a lot of the information that people discussed this evening in terms of how to soften the building to look more residential, even though it's not a residential home. It's not meant to be a house, but there's some residential elements that you could put into the building that can soften it and take away from more of the commercial. A good architect can take that and soften that element that you're trying to create to make it more acceptable.
There's a building directly south of this site that is a commercial property that has a lot of residential elements to it. That might be a good place to start.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Are you asking
What, public?
public comment? I don't think they knew about it.
Yeah.
So
Did
can I
anyone-
just understand that for a second? So is it that it didn't make it to the agenda? Because we checked the agenda.
Online?
Yes,
And it was on there?
it was there.
As of when?
As of today, when we
Afternoon,
printed it.
Yeah,
out.
It was
today.
changed this afternoon at 1 or 2.
I
It may have been
spotted-
advertised in the paper. I wasn't aware of this
Okay.
until today.
Because it was advertised, it was noticed, and it was
Yes,
posted.
but it-
Yeah, you did all of
I
that
want to make sure that we
correctly.
didn't screw it.
No, it
But
wasn't.
no,
You
it was
did. It was
the
an
building
administrative
department.
issue.
Some-
Because then there'll be
glitch.
hell to pay when I got back tomorrow.
Oh, no, you've
Okay.
done all that.
And the legal
correctly.
notice is the paper notice.
Right.
But a lot of people rely on the.
So I don't,
So if I may, if we're adjourning this?
Yeah.
You still have to hear from the
You're
public, I'm
asking us.
getting
the
hit. So,
public didn't step up, sir, so it's fine.
okay, so in terms of, we don't have to renotice, we don't have to
No, this,
repost?
it's, once you've noticed, unless
Okay, I just want to
you're
clarify.
good to go.
Okay, very
So are
good.
you asking us to adjourn to our next meeting on the 26th of August?
Did they give us this?
Is that all right, or you want more time?
Can we have a minute?
Yeah. Well, we might as well keep the date, and then we can.
You can actually.
always adjourn it by phone or by
You can always send a
email.
letter in and ask
Okay,
for what,
yeah.
we would permit that.
Okay.
I will
Okay.
make a motion that we accept the applicant's request for McDonald's to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
Aye.
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 Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Next, why are we having the
It
public
was submitted
hearing?
already. It was submitted.
Oh, what?
He was trying to submit more information, which we don't want.
Okay. Public hearings historic. Why, don't we have to have the advisory first before we review this, council?
Dawn, we need I know there's a letter from your office with 3 alternative site. Was that, I don't remember if it was directed toward the application or the report part of this. Do you want to address the board on that?
Yes.
Do you not want to?
No, I'd like to address it.
What part should it be? The report part or the?
It's really both of them, you know.
I'm a little bit concerned about, I'm a little bit concerned about joining them,
Okay,
but
so
I
make it
understand what
part
you're
of the report.
saying.
Make it part of the
No,
report.
let's do it part of the report.
Yeah, I think it's probably better.
Of the referral report?
Yes.
Okay, so
So
how
we'll
will we do this on?
We will just skip over this, and we'll go later on to the report part, and call it in.
And so I
the end of
won't
the
call it
meeting.
as part of the agenda?
Correct.
Okay, next. Lifton,
That okay?
and Lifton Green LLC is adjourned. There's a letter for adjournment. Is that in the file?
There is, yes.
Rob, would you check the file, because there was a request made for them to identify whether the letter, whether it included both the
a referral?
presentation and the report.
For listing green?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's both. I'm handing up a letter, a request for adjournment as well. It's incorrectly denominated as change of counsel.
Right.
It's
Adding counsel.
Owner wanted,
Adding?
yeah, the owner wanted to have
So-
separate counsel.
So, how do we call that? It
Just,
says it in your
just handle it
letter?
as an adjournment.
Oh.
And we may be back asking.
Right.
Okay,
So
I just wanted to,
All right,
So
so
we
the
have-
application
gotcha.
part is requested to be adjourned.
both of them,
Both of them.
both of them.
So should we have a motion to approve the adjournment of, is there a letter on this first
Yes, the
one?
letter.
Of Thomas Joyce?
No, no,
Let them
270,
adjourn.
270.
Talking about
270 Ox Pasture?
yes.
Okay,
What's the matter, Rob?
So Bo asked me a question, which was, do the letters reference both the application and the referral?
Correct, but I think John had just submitted a letter to answer that question.
But just,
Well, consider it to the extent, I can add to it if you'd like. To me,
because it does say application
silly.
for certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. Do you want me to add
could
to
we
it?
just
or-
put the referral in there
Why, we just
too?
put it in the-
Sure.
And
Just
referral.
write that in there.
John,
The other letter from Ackerman, Packman, Brown, and Goldstein doesn't specify either.
Okay, let's have a motion while he's writing.
Motion to adjourn.
What am I doing, and referral?
A motion to accept, a motion to
Applicant's
approve
request.
the applicant's request to adjourn
Lift
the
green.
certificate of appropriateness application.
For LLC, do
What are you doing about the referral?
we're going to do that.
Can I ask for a sense of when you believe this matter may move forward substantively?
Well,
We have to do the referral.
We've just, the motion is to
No,
adjourn both of
that's
them.
for-
No, the motion is
No.
to adjourn
The
the
application.
COA.
Okay.
why aren't you doing, if I
We're going to
may?
do that next.
Okay, all right. Okay, so this is the motion to adjourn the certificate of occupancy?
Yes.
Okay.
Of
Okay.
appropriateness.
Did
Of
you move?
appropriateness.
Or
I
I'll
need a
move to.
second.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, so we're.
Now a
that-
motion on the report aspect.
So
What, he
this,
wants an adjournment on that?
Yes.
Well, do we want to grant that?
Yes.
so my question then stands now.
There you go.
What's a sense of when this will move forward substantively?
If
Do you
not,
have any idea?
hopefully, if not next month, because I'm waiting for Steve Bedford's report. Hopefully, if not next meeting, the meeting after, hopefully.
So the advisory is, you were asking for an
For
adjournment?
both of them, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Let's-
didn't
let's
get,
take
I'm
yes for an
sorry, I
answer.
missed a beat there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's just do it now then, and we
Yes.
can move ahead. Motion to,
Approve applicant's request to adjourn the,
the two, the
no,
advisory.
you've already made a motion on the
Already did
first
one.
part of it. This is this is a motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn the reference from the Board of Appeals.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 Nay.
And is that for both of those?
No, it's for one.
You're done.
What happened to Joyce?
You've adjourned that, you've kicked that back to the end of the meeting.
Oh. Okay.
So we're
Next.
moving on now to,
Are we on to 72 Gin Lane, Mr.
Yes.
Bennett? LLC, 72 Gin Lane, construct two-story single-family dwelling and demolish existing dwelling. There's a letter that was submitted to the file. Antoinette?
Two new letters to
Oh,
file today.
hello.
Hello, how are you?
Okay,
Couldn't get out of town, Susan.
I guess
I
not.
have two new letters. I was not furnished with it.
Oh, there, okay.
Oh.
So when we last heard this, you have to
Can I
sit
make my
down.
presentation? Can I make my presentation?
You can't be up here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one at a time, sir. Trying. There was a question about a covenant.
Well, let me get first to the architectural review aspect of it, okay?
Really? Yep. Why would we have jurisdiction if a covenant prevents us,
It doesn't prevent us.
doesn't prevent us? Okay.
Okay, so at the last meeting, which I think was June 24th, there were, let's see, I'm just trying to read the colloquy. Mr. Coburn said I don't have any problems, but the architecture looks great. That's the video transcript at 56.40. Ms. Redding noted, I think it's beautiful. See the video transcript at 56.55. And Mrs. Stevenson noted a preference for the change in materials proposed by Mr. Haynes, and then advised that the plans could be hand-corrected to note the same. And that's the video transcript at 51:27. The first Tim Haynes was here. The prior elevation made this reverse gable look like it was higher than the top of the house. So we corrected that. So the elevation previously looked a little bit, the reverse gable looked like it was higher than the main ridge of the house. So we corrected that to make sure that there was no, to correct that visual impropriety. And then there was a question as to whether or not it was going to be, oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
The main house is white with slate, and the board stated a preference for cedar shingle and white shingles, which we...
Cedar shingles and white shingles?
Yeah, well, painted white. Cedar
white.
Cedar shingle roof and what painted white shingles, that's correct.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Which to me is a great relief, because that whole trend of this is essentially functions as a guest house, even though it's a single-family residence, but that whole trend of the guest house or the pool house looking like a baby of the house is, and it's nice to
Well,
have
it
some
doesn't look
different...
anything like that
That's what I'm saying.
thing that's up on
That is so much
stilts.
better. And then I do have a letter on the on this covenant issue that came up, which is quite extensive, I think it's essentially a legal matter which you would want to speak to counsel about, but it's, how do I say this respectfully? Once you guys decided that you liked the architecture, that was really the end of your job. You really don't have any jurisdiction to parse over or even consider
Well,
a
here,
covenant.
Mr. Bennett, my question is, did we have jurisdiction to consider it because of the covenant? And you're
Yes.
saying we do?
This is a little clouded.
Okay, I'm not, it's not the most interesting part of this.
Certainly not. Matter had proceeded, as I remember. The board had a consensus to approve this application. There was an objection raised that a covenant existed which may prevent the construction of this house. I wasn't aware of that. The board wasn't aware of it. Counsel for the applicant and the objectant were asked to agree upon a date themselves to submit written submissions to this board, meaning me, to review this. Mr. Bennett submitted his today. This is all based upon our review of whether or not this covenant has any impact on your jurisdiction. That's as simple as it is.
Okay, and
we
you're
haven't
saying it
gotten there
doesn't?
yet. Mr. Bennett submitted his letter by email late this morning, and we're now waiting for the opponent to hear something. So it's not, we don't need to answer these questions. We haven't reviewed it yet.
So we're allowed to,
You're proceeding with the
fine.
architecture,
and proceeding.
Mr.
Okay.
Bennett has said there's a modification and amendment, so continue.
But just generally elucidating as to what the law is.
why tell us? Because it doesn't
Well,
matter.
because you need to know.
You need to know. You need to know. We cited some case law, but it's consistently held that each local agency involved in the zoning and planning process may not exceed the bounds of the power specifically delegated to it. I'm reading from a case of the Second Department, Moriarty versus Planning Board of the Village of Sloatsburg. A town board may not review a planning board's denial of a site plan approval, nor may a village board of trustees consider an appeal from the granting of a building permit by a building inspector, since the legislature has delegated that power to the Board of Appeals. Your board talks about general design, character, and appropriateness, texture, materials, colors, visual compatibility, and the like, but it doesn't have anything to do with a covenant that grew out of litigation based upon a variance.
Okay.
And just in any event. And then I point out that if it's all based upon two letters that Mr. Foster wrote confirming what everyone seemed to know about this property. And then I do note that since that is a determination of Mr. Foster, if Mr. Shumway had any problem with it, he was duty-bound to take that to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the time in which to do that is gone. So I would simply ask you, I had asked you to close the meeting and render a decision. I'll leave that up to you, of course. That would be my request, because I don't think there's been any showing whatsoever that you have any jurisdiction to consider any of the covenant
Is there
issues.
anyone here who has anything to say about the actual architecture and materials of the two-story single-family dwelling and the demolishing of the existing cottage? Does that mean? I don't know. I'm in a quandary,
Good evening,
sir.
Thomas Gibbons. I represent South Lane Properties, the owner of 104 Gin Lane. As Mr. Robinson stated, when we were here on June 24th, the directive was that Mr. Bennett and I agree to a briefing schedule and then submit briefs. I wrote a letter to Mr. Bennett June 26, 2 days later. I submitted it to the board with my request for an adjournment of tonight's hearing. It said we were directed to submit briefs. Let's come to an agreement and we'll submit them at such and such a date and such a time. I didn't hear anything. Today, having not heard anything for 6 weeks, I called Mr. Bennett's office, and his associate Bailey said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to email you over our brief." So what I request is that the board put this hearing over to a date in September. I will read Mr. Bennett's brief and submit my own, as we were instructed to do. And if I can comment on one thing Mr. Bennett said, well, that Mr. Shumway's time to object. That's the whole problem. How is Mr. Shumway or anybody supposed to know about a letter issued by the building inspector? Were they supposed to foil every file of every property in the village? That's why we have public hearings. So how could someone be held to a standard of, well, you only have 30 or 60 days to appeal? Nobody knew about it. No one knew about it because that's not the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to go back in front of the planning board, the entity that issued the covenant, and say, this is what we'd like to do. So my request before this board is that we adjourn to the first date in September. I will submit my brief in response to Mr. Bennett's brief.
Maybe heard. I object.
Couple questions. So 6 weeks went by and you didn't check with Mr. Bennett as to what was happening?
I did. I sent him a letter
On what day?
2 days later. And
2 days later, what day of the year was that?
June 26th.
Okay, but 6 weeks went by, you just said, and you hadn't received a response, but you didn't make a further inquiry as to...
No, I called today, correct.
Called today, okay.
And I was told that we're emailing a letter over to you shortly.
Did you read the letter?
I did not get all the way through it. I was in court in East Hampton and had other matters to attend to. I briefly
I'm just
reviewed it.
wondering where this is going.
I just
mean,
need time to submit a brief.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you where your client is headed with this. Is this just a stall for time, or?
It's not a stall for time. We're asking the village to enforce a covenant that it imposed.
No,
It's not
no,
a
you're
stall for
asking,
time.
apparently you're asking the board, this board to enforce that covenant.
I'm asking the board to refer this matter to the planning board.
Why
and
can't your client do that?
Why can't my client do what?
Refer it to the planning board.
Because the last time we were here, the matter was in front of the ARB, this board, we were told to submit briefs. All I'm asking to do...
This isn't getting us anywhere, and we're going in circles. You know as well as I do that these boards have their own jurisdictions, as Mr. Bennett pointed out. This board doesn't refer things to other boards. Can you point to a section in our village code that says that?
We cannot.
I'll tell you why you can't, because it doesn't exist. So where's your client going? This is an architectural board. It's got an architectural application. He's coming in to say there's a private covenant that would prevent this from being constructed. Why hasn't your client, to this day, referred this to the building inspector?
It's not a private covenant. It was a covenant imposed by the planning board. And the last time I was here, I was told to submit a brief. All I'm asking to do is give a time for me to submit a brief. That's
Let
it.
me rephrase this. Why hasn't your client, if this is a matter of enforcement, referred this to the building inspector?
I will do that
already?
next, but we're in front of the ARB. And why should this board go through...
We're not looking for questions. We're not looking for why. Tell us the jurisdiction over which your client is functioning.
You've had 6 weeks, whether you see Mr. Bennett's commentary or not, to answer that question.
No, I had 6 weeks to submit a brief, which I'm willing
Tell us
to do.
what the answer is going to be.
I can't, I haven't had an opportunity
You haven't
to
looked
review.
at this for 6 weeks?
No, I haven't had an opportunity to review Mr. Bennett's
No,
brief.
forget what Mr. Bennett said. I'm asking you what your client, how your client is saying to this board, this board has the right to deal with that covenant, to enforce it.
Having not reviewed Mr. Bennett's
I'm
brief.
not asking you to
I
review
can't
Mr.
respond-
Bennett's
I
letter.
can't respond to your answer
All
right
right,
now.
then you can't.
All right, so where are we?
So,
add one thing if I may?
I'm asking where your client is going with
And I
this.
responded where he's going. He's asking the village to enforce the covenant
He's
he
not
imposed.
asking the village. This is not the village. This is the Architecture Review Board.
Of the village of Southampton.
No, that's not the village. If
So then why was I told to
If you
submit a
want to go
brief?
to the village, you're in the wrong board. You need to be in front of the village trustees.
Or the building.
And you're not there.
Or the building inspector for enforcement, right?
So why aren't you?
Again, I was told to submit a brief. That's all I'm asking to do. It was your directive.
You were
Submit a
told to
brief.
submit a brief after you got up and raised this objection.
Right, I was told
So
come to it.
before you got to the brief, when you stood up to object, where was your client going?
Back in front of the ARB to submit a brief as we were told
No,
to.
forget the brief.
Then why was I told to submit
That was after
one?
you stood up. You stood up initially to object to this.
I
Where was your
understand that.
client going at that time with this request?
To ask to tell this board or request that it's premature for them to comment on the architecture when our position is that the applicant doesn't have the ability to build the house that they want. So it's either yes, I get an adjournment, or no, I don't,
You're
but I'll
not
submit my...
responding to the questions, and it's going in a circle. You have a very difficult, if not impossible, circumstance to come in front of this board and ask it to get involved with that covenant.
I didn't ask to get it involved. I was told to submit a brief. Was I
They're
not?
incapable.
All I'm asking is either yay adjournment
don't
or
wanna-
no
I-
adjournment,
no.
and I'll submit a brief.
Bo, can I ask you a question? So, Article 78 exists if the person feels that the board is, excuse me, Susan, if the board is operated beyond its authority, or has been capricious.
If a municipal organization or a public has done or not done something that somebody objects to, they take an Article 78.
Right. So is this not the subject of an Article 78? If we are charged with reviewing the architectural design, we could, it seems to me, very well vote on that. And if you and your client object and feel that we have operated improperly and beyond our purview or jurisdiction, then I think their redress is in Article 78.
Right. All I've been trying to do is find out what the covenant meant, because it was proposed, we had no knowledge of it. So I've read the covenant in the meantime. It involves the planning board. It does not involve the architecture of this building. And in the meantime, I asked the client, the applicant, and the opponent to give us some written material on it.
I'm happy to do
Mr.
that.
Bennett has done it. The opponent has seen fit not to
Well, he's
do it.
done it today.
He did it today.
It does, I read the covenant, it does have something to do with what you can build.
What you can build, not the architecture of what you can build. You've been asked to review the architecture of what you can build.
Does it but I feel like,
The question is, let's put it a different way. The question is, can this board deny the architectural application based upon that covenant?
No.
And it doesn't appear that it can, and it doesn't appear that it would have the jurisdiction to even consider such a discussion. And if the board does approve the architecture and the objectant doesn't like it, they can take an Article 78.
Yes.
that's what council says, but.
Can I ask you this? Because it was my impression in the meeting on the 24th, when you suggested these submittals, that the submittals were not necessarily intended for us. It was intended for you to be able to review the situation and determine
And advise
whether
you.
there was substance to it, and if so, what the appropriate action might be for trying to find
As
relief.
Mr.
It was
Bennett
not
said.
a representation that this board would weigh those submittals in a legal sense.
That's
We just
correct.
don't have that
Yeah,
ability.
that's not our job.
So,
It was as Mr. Bennett said, it's a legal issue, and so it was referred to council so I could get some knowledge of this and find out where the positions were. Part of which is, where does the opponent think they're going with this in front of an architecture review board? And as you've seen from the colloquy tonight, if they object to this proceeding forward, it's not a matter of architecture. They should be in some other part of the municipal system here, either the building inspector or the trustees or the planning board, not the ARB.
Zoning board, yeah.
Or the zoning board. I would suggest I believe there's a consensus for approval.
I agree.
I would say that you
Close the,
close it
motion
for
to close.
accept provide a week for council to submit whatever writing they want. And
Okay.
A week is plenty, thank you.
Okay.
And if you, based on that, believe that there is something in there that that would affect our proceedings, we can address it at the next meeting.
Written decision, is that correct? Okay.
Wait,
So,
if I may, you told me, this is the sort of gamesmanship that I really detest. No, listen to me, please. You told me to submit a brief. I submitted a brief. Here it is. Why is this, I submitted a brief blind with no idea of what my adversary was going to submit. Why is he getting the last shot?
Because what you just said isn't accurate. You weren't told to submit a brief. You were told to reach out and come to a briefing schedule.
Oh, and I guess you
didn't
don't know how to
respond
dial
my-
a phone.
And neither do you.
6, 7 weeks
I'll
ago.
submit my brief within 1 week.
I think
would
this
object
is,
to that.
I believe that giving a week to submit a response to your brief, or a brief, whatever you want to call it, is fair. We are only asking we will close this application for written decision, but that means. that we-
Subject to council submitting a
council
brief
submitting a brief.
by the close of business next
And what if
Monday.
he says something that I find
He'll provide you with the copy, and if
And then
you
you
find
can-
that, then
You can write him a letter, and then we
write
can
him a
all read
letter
it.
and arrange a schedule where between now and the 26th, you can resolve that issue.
Well, I would like to have at least 2 days' notice. If he's going to, what's the next meeting, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
He's got a
26th.
week, so
So
if
he
I
has
see
to have this by the
anything that
close-
I
Right.
feel appropriate to respond to, I
Yes.
should be able to do that by
Yes,
the
of
next
course.
hearing.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay,
Close of business next Monday,
so motion
and adjourn
to
for disclose and adjourn.
close the application of
only.
72 Gin Lane LLC
For written decision.
for written decision
I just
with,
want to do one last thing, put this in the record.
you can
The-
put
the- the
anything
claim
you
was
want in
made-
the
the claim-
record.
No, the claim was made that there was no knowledge of this. The New York State Village, this is critical, the New York State Village Law gives you, if you have a problem with something the building inspector says, gives you 60 days to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. 62 days ago, we gave Mr. Gibbons a copy of Mr. Foster's letter. And he acknowledged, thank you. So that period's gone.
Motion to approve applicant's request,
No,
motion
the
to
board. This
close
is the
the,
board. This is the board
motion to close the hearing of 72 Gin Lane
for decision.
for this written decision with the caveat that the submissions can be made to the
Opponent can submit to the board a written
board.
reply.
I think both, can't they both submit? Why
Because
are we,
you have to go, one has to read the other, so by the close of business on Monday.
on Monday, the
10 days from now.
the
19th.
19th? And then, Mr. Bennett, you would like,
If it's necessary. If I deem it necessary, I'll
just come, because we could
I'll submit something.
submit
in
another
response.
letter.
Yes.
Okay, so
Prior to,
prior to our next meeting.
Yes,
Is
absolutely.
that acceptable, council? Okay, do I have a second?
So moved.
second. Aye.
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 Wow, that was fun. But next, Aquin Deutsche Bank, 155 Hampton Road.
Hello. How are you? Back again.
Yeah.
What's your name again? Sorry.
Joe Melito. We're back again because we went to the property to do a walkthrough, and you submitted a report, and we were already approved on the demolition on the garage in the back, and we were just waiting on the report.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
I already read the report before, didn't
It arrived the day of our last meeting.
I? Oh.
Too late.
Got it.
to act on
That's right.
Zach, do you want to characterize the report, could you?
Or just briefly summarize it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I was given a tour of the property inside and out.
Who gave you the
house.
tour?
Mr. Melito and his associate, who is actually here with us, whose name I forget, I'm sorry. Colin. And so we had a pretty comprehensive tour of primarily the interior, and I wrote up what I feel to be a general characterization of the house. It's vacant. There was no appearance to me of there being any structural failure. I can't address systems, things of that nature, because nothing was on, and that's not my area of expertise. I was looking at the architecture. And I was curious to sort of understand how the building had evolved, because it's clearly larger than it was to begin with, so that was a point of interest to me. We went through the entire structure. Nothing seemed extraordinary to me on the inside. I did inquire about access to whatever there was in the form of a basement or crawl space beneath, really out of curiosity, because that's often where you see the framing, the structure, that you can sort of get a better sense of the house. That access is not inside the house. It's from an exterior entryway, which is now actually covered by the back deck. And
there's a hatch to it?
There's a, not a Bilco door, but a hatch door that opens up. And it became pretty clear right off the bat that the actual stairs or ladder or whatever it would be to get down into that hole, I wasn't really dressed for this, but was gone. Okay. There was no access.
Do you have a flashlight?
Yeah, I had the flashlight, but not the fatigues. So
insurance do we keep on him?
So all in a day's work. So I did comment in the report that just for someone who might want or need access to that level for systems failure, checking something, that facilitating that would be a good thing. So that little staircase, that ladder, that would be good to furnish, because that's disappeared. I also took note, I guess previously, of some eave problems on the outside of the house that warrant some correction, some repair. And that's about it. There were some loose floorboards on the porch.
Repair in terms of the historical accuracy or just the quality of the materials and workmanship? I mean,
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Did you have an architectural or historic concern about the work that had been done before, or just the condition of it? The condition needed to be addressed?
No, it's just really physical conditions.
And can I ask, so you didn't have access to the crawl space. You see the structure and you see things like dry rot and wet rot and all that good stuff. Was there anything on the outside that would indicate to you that there might be a structural problem that ought to be reviewed from inside? From downstairs?
No, the only area were those overhanging eaves on the southwesterly corner, second story, deep overhanging eaves where the boards are clearly rotting, so they need to be repaired.
But you didn't see bowing in the sill or?
No, there was no apparent structural failure, so there wasn't, you often will find some amount of deflection in the floors, either on the first or second story, where indicating there's some structural failure. There was no indication of that.
Are we talking about the house or the garage?
The house.
The house.
Yeah, the house.
But what's before us is the garage?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
So I want
I'd
to
like
make sure, I wasn't here last week, I want to make sure I
Been a little
wasn't missing
roundabout.
anything.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not talking about knocking the house down, we're talking about knocking the garage
Well,
down.
that's
But we
what
are
I'm-
talking about not letting the house fall down, is that
Right.
correct?
May
You
I
have
ask
an
you a
obligation.
question? When did the bank get legal ownership of this house?
That answer I do not have.
Approximately?
Approximately, I believe, 3
You
to
have
4
to
years
stiff-
ago. I'm sorry.
And please state your name.
Colin Corcoran, Regional Field Service Manager
Okay.
for Altisource. Approximately 3 to 4 years ago, I believe, the house went to REO. I've only been in this district for about 1 year.
It went to REO, but you didn't secure ownership until.
That I'm not sure.
Okay.
I inspect houses.
That's a process in REO.
Well, that would be when they secured ownership, would be when it went into REO.
Not complete all the time. Not complete. REO is just a department that will continue to take ownership of, and there's usually a process of doing so. So it does
Negotiated
take a little-
foreclosures.
All right.
No, the reason I ask is because there's some concern about maybe the condition of the house. There's some concern about some issues that the prior owner may have initiated under the prior owner with respect to the village. And so there was a concern, maybe some confusion or concern about whether that was reflective of the bank's ownership style or the previous owner's ownership style. And it's my impression that you're, at least in the last several months, that seems to have been a pretty diligent effort to repair some things on the house, to do some maintenance. A new roof went on, and to try to clean it up and to put it on the market. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes.
I did
Great.
wanted
Now-
to just
If you feel there's no jeopardy to the house, then just clear me to prepare the decision, and I'll have it ready at the next meeting.
I think I have to ask for public comment again.
Yep.
Is there anyone who would like to speak? You
Make
do
room.
have to sit down. Please step forward and state your name.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Bill Slight. I'm a local architect. I am the person who initiated the request that the board, given the opportunity to review the request for demolition of the barn, exploit that opportunity to examine the condition, what I observe to be the deteriorating condition of the main house. I appeared at the board's meeting on the 8th of July and, went through some of my feelings about what I believe on the exterior of the building is obvious deterioration, perhaps even deterioration that would compromise the ongoing integrity of the building. At that meeting, you instructed Mr. Studenroth to visit the site.
Right. Is there anything new? We don't need actually a repeat.
Excuse me.
Sir, we have heard this before.
Excuse me. I'm making a presentation.
I know you are, and I'm asking you, is there anything new that you have to add? You've made
Yes,
that
I
presentation
have.
before us before.
Yes, I do. And when an attorney appears before you,
You know what? You're just delaying the process. Do you have anything new to add?
I certainly do.
Please proceed with that information.
May I ask a question of the board? Do you have within your file the engineer's report that you were handed at the
Yes, we
You do?
have a file that was prepared, yes.
And it was handed to you and signed in at the meeting on July 8th, the engineer's report. Am I correct?
What's the question?
The question is that I filed a FOIL request to examine that report. It's not in the file.
Well, we saw it before. It had a weird type style.
Well, I'm not making it up, that it wasn't when I filed a specific
it's like
FOIL request for it,
from them.
and it was not in the file.
What's the substantive concern here? May I ask, and may I also ask what your interest in this property is?
My interest in the property is that I'm concerned about the stored resources within the village.
I am too. Do you have any commercial concern on this property?
Absolutely not.
You have no client or anyone who's interested in this property?
I had a client who had an interest in inquiring about it, but
and they don't anymore have an interest?
No, because the asking price is beyond the value of the property.
Well, in their opinion. They've just put a new roof on the house. That doesn't strike me as the actions of someone who's trying to let a house fall down. It strikes me as the actions of someone who's trying to position a property to be sold.
And the new roof was put on subsequent to Mr. Studenroth's report. Okay.
Which means what? What does that mean?
All right. I'm not here to argue with you.
No, I know,
okay?
but what does that mean?
Yeah.
So why make the comment?
So Mr. Studenroth's report on the portion that says exterior. The exterior of the building is in reasonably good condition. skipping a couple sentences, no significant areas of deterioration were observed except for sections of the overhang roof, eave, south facade, porch steps, and floorboards which require repair. The failing exterior paint covering is cosmetic in nature and does not affect the integrity of the house at this time. He also pointed out that he did not get into the basement, he did not observe the mechanical systems, but he said that no penetration of water was detected that would indicate compromised roof or wall window element. Numerous openings in the ceilings were observed. This is inside the building, where removals of
Well, we're reviewing the garage, and we're having a whole, we're literally going through an entire dialogue.
I understand
over-
the application was about the garage. What I pointed out...
So the substantive conversation, discussion should be around the garage, not the house. We did a review and asked our historic consultant to do a review to ensure that at least it wasn't
Part of
deteriorating.
your mandate.
Based on his review, the house is not. Now can we go back to substantive conversation about the garage, because we're moving on to other areas that have nothing to do with the application.
Frankly, I'm rather surprised at your comments about that. Would you have said similar things about the Purist Concert House if someone had come to you before it
Talking
actually...
about a designated lot, a historic designated lot with an entirely different situation. If we were talking about the garage, I probably would say the same. But that is unfair for you to make that type of comment. I'm going to say something about that. That is unfair for you to make that.
What ultimately happened to the Purist Concert
That's
House?
entirely, I'm going to say to you, that was unfair to make that comparison specifically to me. And I'm insulted by you saying that. Second of all, we're talking about a garage.
You were chairman of the board at the time. That's why it was to you, not for any other reason.
I understand what you're saying, but I took offense to that comment specifically to me.
Well, none was intended.
What is your point?
Yeah, what is the point?
What is the point? We don't read us what the report says. What's your point?
Isn't this an enforcement issue if he's concerned about the house deteriorating?
I would like to submit this group of photographs. You may pass it among yourselves. And I would like you to take a look at these photographs in light...
What is your point?
My point is that the Mr. Studenroth's report does not really adequately reflect the condition of the structure.
We're not an enforcement agency, though, sir. We're not.
Yes, you do. And you know what?
We're an advisory board, and we can request enforcement by people who do enforcement, which we may be inclined to do.
Who is that?
Building inspector.
Okay, when I was here at the 8th meeting of the July 8th, I asked that the building inspector be instructed to go.
It's not the position of this board to instruct him.
You can go over and ask him. Why don't you do that?
You mentioned in the previous meeting, I forget the date,
gotta end.
that the building inspector perhaps be one of the people to inspect it.
Perhaps.
And what the board the board instructed its historic consultant to go and
Why
look.
are you repeating what we've already done? What is your point?
My point, take a look at these
No,
photographs.
we're not going to take a look at that.
Well,
We're going to close this meeting. If you don't have anything more substantive to say than this, you're wasting this board's time.
I am presenting evidence.
If you have a problem, go to the building inspector. Or take an Article 78. You want to close the meeting?
I do not feel that it's fair. If I were an attorney, you would not.
You've had more than enough opportunity to stand up here and explain yourself, and you haven't done it. You keep dissembling and digressing from the opinion, and now you're arguing with us.
I second the motion.
I am not arguing, and you are not giving me the opportunity.
Matter is closed.
Application is closed. Next.
Well, those photos, I asked that
Mr.
those
Slight,
photos
I would direct you to please
be entered into the record.
Yes, they have been entered
Matter
into
is
the record.
closed.
I do not understand why.
Sir, the matter is closed.
408
There is hostility.
Matter is closed.
I have not raised my voice to you.
You keep talking over everyone
I have not
here.
been disrespectful.
Application is closed.
It's disrespectful when you talk over someone.
Thank you, everybody.
Who did I speak over?
You've spoken over me. You've spoken over every member of the board here.
I've been interrupted.
Sir, the matter
every
is
time.
closed.
It's closed. let's move ahead. It's
Well,
been a long evening already.
I will conclude by, I believe that the board is...
Sir, the matter is
It's
closed.
is ignoring its mandate
Please,
to protect the
Mr.
historic
Slight,
resources
no
of the
disrespect, but
village.
we're finished now. Thank you.
I think
Next,
you- I think
408
there's been a great deal of
FNL
disrespect.
LLC. Construct accessory pool house. Hi.
Hello, good evening.
How's the pool?
It's very nice. I'm Stephen Chrisman, this is Thomas McManus. We're with the architects Ferguson Schmamian, and we're proposing a pool house on 408 First Neck Lane.
We were before this board last September, just to remind the board, for the main house, which was approved. That's just a rendering of the main house that was approved back in September. Just a little bit of context for that site plan.
I got it too. I heard what you said.
So we're proposing a pool house towards the rear of the property. It's about 350 feet off of First Neck Lane. It can hardly be seen in the distance of the site due to trees and the front hedges at the front of the street. Maybe we could go to the rendering if you'd like to look at the elevation. So we're proposing simple pool house, wood horizontal boards, metal roof, standing seam metal roof, painted doors and windows.
No, it's not part of the application, but your proposed solar field. Explain, because I'm interested.
It says solar field in the rear of the property required by the HERS rating.
Yeah.
Right.
It has these
And it's-
panels,
Yeah,
It's a low to the ground, concealed
but-
primarily by the hedges
but
and
it's allowable, huh?
yeah, there's one on,
it's required.
It's required
Great
because
Plains
they have
Road,
so
there's
many
one.
windows and it's such a big house.
It's
So you
required
can
because of
either
the
do
size of the house, with or with.
geothermal or-
We actually have to do both.
You have to do
Right.
both because
Right.
you have such a huge house. Hello.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But you won't, they'll be below a hedge, so they're kind of on the
So-
ground.
Dysfunctional.
I've seen them.
for other
They're not
reasons,
pretty, right?
So in
They
general,
just
solar
are.
panels aren't
They're
pretty,
very
which is why we
regular.
put them in the back of the property and
They're
hide them
very
behind
regular.
them. They are, right.
That's right.
Okay, I just, you know how much I love those metal roofs, even in the back of this property. What brought this on?
So the idea is that the pool house structure take on a characteristic that's a bit turned down from the main house, a bit
Yeah.
more agrarian. We brought some similar images of
But don't you
lead-coated copper
think, I'm
roofs.
sorry, agrarian, please.
Pool house,
We've had a long evening already.
I gotta get my dictionary. Can you hold on for 1 second?
Oh, my God. You think it looks hip and happening and slick. It cannot be agrarian.
No, actually, the other way around. I mean, the idea for the lead-coated copper roof is actually so that you'd see the
Oh,
the
it's
panels of the-
lead-coated copper? Oh,
Right.
I'm much friendlier to that. I thought you said,
That's good.
that's
These
a
are some
nicer
images.
look.
Okay, good.
But still, agrarian, I don't
Well,
think we should refer to that in this ginormous land house, this house. You know, sorry. Okay, go on. Sorry I interrupted.
I wouldn't say that either. Please stop. Stop while you're at it.
Agrarian.
After the last comments, I think we
Maybe
should
we
stop with comments.
So these are pictures of what that roof could look like.
Okay,
We're
it
imagining-
mellows down in a way that other stuff doesn't.
That's right.
We thought that might be the
Well,
reaction, which is why
I
we
was
brought it.
surprised by you guys having something so. Okay, does anyone have any, I think it looks fine.
I just had a question out of curiosity, and it also happens to be, I get that it's very far away, but it's a facade that faces toward the street. Where do the doors fold to? Where do the folding
They
doors
fold in
fold
plan, they fold into a pocket on
On
the,
the inside of the
Oh, I
central
see.
space.
Over on, okay.
so near
Over on the left
storage
side,
of the
yeah,
bathroom. That's exactly right. So they fold away and they're intended to be closed or in the storage.
on the north side of
On
them.
the north side. That's right.
Thank you. I don't have any questions or concerns.
Okay. Motion to close the application of 408.
Any public
Oh, any
comment?
public comment? Motion to close the application of 408 FNL LLC, 408 First Neck Lane, for written decision for the pool house.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you waited all the time. Next, Corcoran, I'm sorry, sir, I know it was a long wait.
But it's been so much
I bet. I could see you were amused, which, what can I tell you? This is how it works. Corcoran, 24 Main Street, exterior alterations to existing building, and it should say lighting.
Could I have the stamped plans for the pool house, please, that we just saw?
Yes.
Did anyone not get a copy of this? that wants one?
No, we have it, it's just under a pile, but I have it.
So again, I'm Chandler Pierce. This is regarding the front of the Corcoran property.
Okay.
Excuse me, sorry, sir.
Sorry,
Little housekeeping.
sorry, we have
Keep
like a
going.
weird thing.
Here we go.
Okay, go.
Okay, so front of the Corcoran property, that's the old Brown Harris property. And so we have photographs inside in the packet that shows what Brown Harris looks like today. The signage we went over, taking off the black band. We're trying to calm things down here. So what we're changing on the exterior, we're painting it a color, Benjamin Moore OC 65.
Lovely.
That's just a little warmer than what's there right now.
How would you describe that color?
White.
White.
Hold on.
We're on the same page.
Yeah,
It's
it's
white.
just so, yes, it's white.
Wait a second, sorry. Do you have affidavits of mailing and posting?
He's feeling his pocket.
I don't think so. I have a photograph.
No, of mailing and posting, you have to actually mail out.
We mailed out.
Do you have the proof of
We need
that,
the
or an affidavit of
So we
that?
don't have jurisdiction.
We can't talk about it then, after you waited the whole time.
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm not kidding. But is it in the file? So did you fill out, can you show?
We filled out, we posted the sign on all four sides.
Yeah, and then you have to mail to the neighbors, they give you a list.
Mailed to the neighbors.
But you have an affidavit, which you would have gotten from the building department, which says
That you mailed.
That we
did
mailed.
that. Both those things. Otherwise, we don't have jurisdiction.
Is it with the sign permit?
Double check.
When you say "we," who is "we"?
My office. Is there any way we can talk about it and then provide
No, we're
those?
not allowed to by our council. Mr. Robinson, it doesn't, we aren't allowed because we have no
They
jurisdiction.
have no jurisdiction.
Even if we,
Is it included in there?
No.
No?
oh my God,
I had hope for you.
yeah.
Okay, can I ask a question about anything that's an issue here on this that we could deal with now?
Wouldn't be a
No.
part of record.
Someone said something about the lighting.
You should have listened to that at that time.
I did listen to it. That's why I'm bringing it up again.
Think
I'm
about
saying
it.
be kind to the
Think about
person
it.
that
You can
sat
review
through
the tape
5 hours here.
on the Southampton
Only two.
Yeah.
Village.org
Felt like five.
website,
Okay.
and you might want to just look around.
Are you
Night.
closed, are they closing the office close on the
Brown
northern
Harris or
end?
Corcoran?
Corcoran.
The old one.
Corcoran is moving from there to there.
So they're shutting that, so it's going to be a
That's
vacant entity in the old building?
I think for about 2 seconds, because the day they move out, Compass moves in.
Okay.
Oh, wow, real estate. All right,
More real estate.
we're
That's all we
terribly
need, right?
sorry, but
Our
we
hands
just
are
can't do
tied.
that.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
So call
sir.
the building department up tomorrow and inform them of this and get
That whole
the
deal.
So
documents.
then, what's the next meeting?
We'll
The
see.
26th
26th.
of August, but is that,
26th of August?
Yeah, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks.
So let's do that.
okay, see you then. All right,
Can I be placed on the front of the front of the line?
I'm not in charge of that,
Who is?
but you could beg me
Building
when you get
department.
here.
Building department?
I'll make a motion.
Yes,
No,
motion.
we don't need a
there's
motion.
no
We have
motion.
jurisdiction.
So you could make here we have it, so that's all the applications.
We have,
Thank you very much.
We have a discussion
Joyce.
item.
Oh, no.
Joyce. Still have Joyce. That wasn't closed.
Oh, that wasn't closed? That's the part I was mixed up about. Okay.
That's the report.
So this is the referral under 116-28K, is that correct?
Yes. I hurt myself this weekend, and my doctor told me to elevate my finger.
No. I'm sure you've been,
lucky you injured that
Please don't,
finger, John.
please don't misinterpret.
Okay, so for those of us who can't remember, who want to see the code,
I don't need to see the code. You want to see it? Go ahead.
you want to see it?
Thanks for the good, thanks for the good
Okay,
news.
go ahead, Mr. Bennett. Shoot.
So we're here to try to settle a lawsuit and try to get your advice from regarding us going forward on in the zoning board of appeals. There's a property there that is an antique store. God knows whether or not it's lost its ability to have that, but what we'd like to do is take the back off the antique store, which Zach will correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't seem to be of much value. It's very, very run down. It doesn't add anything to the building, but maintain the building. And we'd like your referral to the Zoning Board of Appeals to agree that we can put this property, however it's going to, this building, however it's going to end up after your input on the property, and make it either ideally an apartment, but if not, a guest house, which would be adjunct to a single-family residence to be built on the property.
So wait, an apartment, that's new.
But that's not us.
Okay.
That's not really use. Yeah,
Okay, I'm
it's
just
up to the
curious
uses.
how that
It's
got
fine.
dropped in there.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So what we really have for you three alternatives here. We're really just going to put ourselves in your hands. I think that you'll remember that at first we were going to slide the building over to where the old garage had been. I'm sensing that was a little bit too much of a leap. So what we have here is two plans, one of which takes the house. Let me make sure we've got the right thing. Okay, here. One takes this building, and it takes the back off. It moves it back 20 feet, which we'd have to get a variance for, but we think it's, from a safety point of view, makes the most sense, because right now the building is right at the porch is right at the property line, which we don't think is safe. There's already been one incident where a car ran into the porch. The chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals said maybe they want to take a better look at the antiques, but I think that from a health and safety point of view, it makes the most sense. This also centers it on the property, probably makes it a little bit more visible, because now it's tucked over into the corner near the McLaughlin real estate office. But that's one alternative. The other alternative, it moves it back 20 feet and leaves it where it is. And finally, the last alternative, which we think is not the greatest, but we'll be satisfied with it, just to move on, the client to move on with their life, is just to take that back off of it and
Leave it at the property line.
yeah, leave it right at the property line. I'm just going to put yourself in our hands. We still think that moving it.
So what are
20 feet back.
I printed out 116-28K for
Okay.
my own use, but
Right.
they're like questions that you should ask. What threats exist to the continuation of the building?
Here's a threat to the continuation of the building, and there's the same. I have a pending lawsuit saying that when you guys decided not to grant the certificate of appropriateness to demolish both buildings, that was an arbitrary and capricious act.
Well, that doesn't have,
But
that's not a threat to...
Yes, it most certainly is. So, and then there's another section.
How is it a threat?
Susan, please let me finish.
No, I need to answer my
It's
questions.
a threat because if I prevail, the building comes down. And I wouldn't be so confident that a judge in the Supreme Court might not say, particularly how they've viewed some exercises of jurisdiction on this and other architectural review boards, said they don't find that there's a valid reason to leave it there. But I'm trying to figure out why you give me a hard time on that, because what I'm trying to do, and there's another section of the code that says please let me finish, that when you deny a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a building, you're supposed to come in here with you folks and try to work it out, which is what I'm doing.
But at the time, we tried to work it out by allowing you to demolish the garage with the expectation, which I believe we agreed on. That was my
That's
understanding.
not true. What I
Well-
demonstrated to you was that the garage had no historic
Okay,
benefits
well-
because it had been totally rebuilt in 1980.
Well, there was old windows and parts to it, but that's
No,
moot.
well, that's what your decision said. So really what I'm trying to do is to work this out, both under the terms of the code that says after the denial of a certificate of appropriateness, try to work it out with the board.
I guess the issue is, are there any threats other than the litigation?
There's threats on litigation?
Yeah,
No.
Susan asked what is impending threatens the stature of the building, and you said the litigation, and I'm saying, other than that, are there any other threats?
It's my opinion that there's a threat to the building because of its physical location. But because of the proximity to the road with 12 to 15,000 cars a day, some of them traveling at 40 to 50 miles an hour, that this does present a public hazard. That's my opinion.
Okay,
And I
Rob.
live on the street, and I think we've had a few applications recently that asked us to consider moving historic properties. And we have generally not thought highly of those proposals. In this case, I think, to me, there are some very specific issues that would make me open to the possibility. This is not a property that was built as an historic residence, not that that matters, but has some impact. It was a commercial property built at a time when there were more commercial properties on the street, and most commercial properties were right on the side of the road because there were very few cars, and they traveled at 10 to 20 miles an hour, and horses ruled the day. That's not the case anymore, and that's out of our control. For me, those factors, that it's a commercial property, that it's placed at all the other commercial properties that might have existed on Hill Street, including one on my property before zoning, that were right up on the road, are basically gone with one or two exceptions. And so I don't think, to me, that the idea of moving this, I think it helps protect the building. I think it will, I appreciate the idea of keeping it visible. I have some thoughts on which of the options that I like, but in this case, for those unique reasons, I don't think we're setting a precedent that affects the other cases we've had recently.
Yeah, I disagree with you, Rob, and I'm also questioning you taking the position of an argument that the applicant should make.
What?
No, John.
That's inappropriate of you.
You were purporting something that, if John had brought it up, that reason, but I think for you to make a statement from this board that is an attempt to direct the board, I think it's a little bit out of line. I'm not saying you're wrong and
I'm not trying to direct the board. I was saying,
I think that's exactly what we're trying to be doing. It's exactly.
Discussing whether the law applies.
I will take the slings of your arrows.
Okay.
But, so, to counter that,
Well, I think
John has offered Plan C, which is to keep the building where it is. So,
But to change its use. That there is another variance involved.
That's under any scheme. That's under any scheme.
Wait,
ABU
but
scheme.
but that is part of the variance that you are asking for, is it not?
But under any location.
That is not the answer to my question. You want to make
Just said to change the, says
two
talk about
residences on one property, yeah?
My challenge with this is, just with all due respect, I love the fact you're doing preservation, but we're turning the building into a museum on the lot. That's what we're doing. It becomes an image, becomes a marker. It's just there. And the owner is going to place it there and place his residency or whatever he's going to build behind it. It's there with no functionality unless he decides to make it something different.
No. It's either going to be it's either going to be a guest house or an apartment.
You're going to make the guests, and for
And
that purpose,
not a little
I
bit of
think-
expense.
For that purpose, I think the house should be set back further, specifically because now you're talking for residential use, and I would think it would be very unfair and very unsafe for the building to be so close to the road.
But that's kind of not our purview. Our purview.
Well, this is an advisory. We're not talking. We're having a conversation about.
Wait, Zach had something
Well,
to say.
just a kind of
Yes.
an angle, a thought, which is that there is this within, National Register listing, and also Secretary of the Interior standards having to do with the advisability of moving buildings. And, does that compromise their historical integrity, et cetera, et cetera. I've had the experience twice now of actually getting buildings listed on the National Register which have been moved once or twice. And the justification for that is that that was the manner in which they were preserved. So in other words, if a building's under threat, if the 6-lane highway is coming along and that's how we're going to save it, we're going to move it over there, or whatever the circumstances are. And I would argue that in this particular case, doesn't always apply, but in this case, moving the building in order to guarantee that it has a viable use, regardless of what it is, whoever's in it, having demonstrated the fact that it's vulnerable because it was built in the horse and buggy days when we weren't careening 60 miles an hour. That is to take it kind of out of harm's way. And I think it would be entirely consistent with not moving it perhaps into the back corner of the property.
No, right.
But I mean, just generally speaking,
okay.
moving it back, I think is justifiable.
Okay.
Regardless of what the
Okay,
use
so
is.
we're listening to you.
I have selfish reasons for why I think it should be used.
Make it affordable.
You want to go into the antiques business?
But I think for purposes of, a possibility of it becoming some type of residence, further back would be more safe, especially if children are involved or kids or anyone for that matter.
Anybody.
And people travel up and down that road extremely fast.
It's not a big move, it's 20 feet. We had started with 40. I think even at 40, Mr. Coburn has said, I thought you were going to come and move it further back.
I think 20 feet is reasonable.
It's still a feature of Hill Street.
I do.
So here, Mr. Bennett, I believe that most of us think that it would be okay for you to move it back 20 feet, but we might want to ask that some conditions be placed in terms of that it be able to be seen as it was, i.e., you don't plant a big hedge in front of it.
No, of course. As a matter of fact, one of the schemes that is in the file somewhere, the hedge is behind
Right,
the
and
house.
parking in addition should not, this should be able, if you move it, it should still be able to be seen from Hill Street, because it really is kind of a hallmark of entering the
Well,
village.
if you, I wouldn't
I know
have the
you
nerve
wouldn't,
to
but we
ask
might need
you
a few
that.
conditions.
I'm not going to ask you to move a historic building, which is part of the fabric, but then hide it. That's
Well, I
not
have
part
no
of it.
idea what people are going to do anymore, obviously, after this meeting, so
Hey,
who
but
knows?
I don't know
Where
who
would
those
the
people are.
parking be specific?
It shows it behind, doesn't it?
Shows it behind.
It would be
So
the
the
main facade
question is,
behind the hedge.
so I think we're all on the same page of referring of the
I
referral.
am, and I take back what you might have inferred from what I said.
Can I just say, by the way, one of the reasons I mentioned this, and I talked about cars going into the house, but a couple years ago on a bit of a tirade because I was one of 12 mailboxes that had been knocked over by the snowplows going down Hill Street at 40 miles an hour. I went down the street to see how many were in my car, and this property had a pile of snow up on the deck. Which had the truck been going 5 miles an hour faster, would have gone through the windows easily.
Okay.
So
You make a good point, Rob.
So are we in agreement that we would allow it to be moved back 20 feet?
20 feet doesn't seem
And the
to be-
question becomes,
Where?
where?
Correct.
We think it makes more sense, although I think you're going to hear from a neighbor who doesn't agree, who's a gentleman. I've known him for years, but sometimes we don't always agree. We think it makes more sense from a visibility point of view to shift it towards the center. But we're in your hands. We're not going to make a big fight about it.
All right, leave that up here and let
Could
him
you just
talk.
describe for the record, so it gets on video, the 3 different locations again? Just to be-
sure.
To
I'm
to
so-
be
and I'm
very
sorry
specific
about
about
that.
their relative.
Well, one is not to move it, so there's only 2.
One of them moves it right to the center, that's that one there.
The other one moves it back 20 feet, but in its location. And the other one leaves it where it is.
Yeah, so we're into the first 2, A and B.
A or B.
You like the what? In the center? I don't know.
Zach,
All
does
right,
it have any
let's
historic?
Tucked
Can
over
you
there.
sit down for a moment so we can let him talk?
Sure.
Thank you. Sir, do you have something to say about this application? Please step forward and state your name.
My name's Keith Green, and I represent the homeowners that live at 749 Hill Street, which is immediately adjacent to the east. And we have discussed this at length and have received all of this documentation from John in time to be able to consider it. And they would support the idea of it being moved back 20 feet, but have the following point of view. One is they prefer it stay where it is on its east-west axis and not be moved closer to their property. When the garage was torn down, it was their understanding that the other property was staying where it is, that the other building was staying where it is.
Right.
But like everyone has said here, if 20 feet back is safer, protects the building, protects the town, protects people that might actually be occupying it, well, then good. But they, in no way, shape, or form, want to hear the word apartment. Two families.
That's not our purview.
I understand.
And I've
But we were at the ZBA, and the ZBA referred it here, and the ZBA, in effect,
Where it's,
For
the
architectural,
historic
I
part.
understand.
It'll go back to them.
So
So we'll be going back to them, but,
Okay.
so
That
I'll be
really
more than
just-
glad not to say it, but
Okay,
they
it's
sort
fine,
of
it's
told me
on
to
the
come and say it. They also were concerned about, well, where whoever is going to be occupying it, going to be putting cars.
So that shows on these
Up to the
schema
ZBA.
that they're behind the
The hedge.
building.
So then it sort of raises the question of where is the driveway going?
Well, they're
because,
showing, you can look at those two things and see where the driveway is.
You know, I've looked at these things
Okay, so that
extensively,
shows
but
the
I'm
driveway,
also
doesn't
a
it?
reasonable student of human nature, and people tend to park right near where they live, not back
So you're
away.
worried about people parking on
In the
this,
driveway
on the
up front?
driveway?
They'll be parking
On the
They'll be
property.
parking next to that building, because that's what people do.
How long have your clients owned their property?
10 years.
So when they bought it, there was another building there?
Yeah.
And there was a driveway between the two, a drive
Yep.
area with cars parked?
Yeah. Yeah. So they, and last but not least, that they, because part of what's going on here is these people are getting permission to build a McMansion on the back of that property. And what they want is some level of assurance that there would be proper hedging and foliage and fence or whatever that would be respectful of the relationship that the two properties have always had. Because while we're sitting here talking about a small building of historical note, what we're really here talking about is this property being groomed to become a McMansion
Well,
property.
we can only really talk about this part right now.
I understand.
Because when they come
But-
forward with
So
the
therefore, we're
next-
saying we'll support the protection of the
Okay.
historic building, provided that,
We can't make
And anything
promises.
they
Can't make a condition.
We can't make
or-
promises. We can only do what we do.
But understand that anything they propose for the back portion of the property will come back before this board. There'll be
Right.
an opportunity to address those then. I think, fair notice, whether we may even say in our referral back to the ZBA, but certainly when the whole plan comes back to us for architectural review, we're going to be asking for a landscaping plan. We're going to be asking for a very specific location of parking to address concerns as part of the site plan, I believe. Does that make sense?
And your clients will be
We're
posted, your
mindful of
clients will
those
be
things.
mailed notification when that application is going to be presented to come here and make their.
Okay.
okay, so then our stand, then if I'm hearing you all correctly, then the stand we take tonight is simply that we support the idea of it being moved back
To help
where it
preserve
is,
Mm-hmm.
on the east-west axis where it is.
Thank
But no
you.
contingencies.
Well, not on the bigger house. Okay, so now where are we?
on that.
Mr. Bennett, let's just go over A and B. Board mem-
So I just realized what you should have told the guys from McDonald's who were asking you for guidance.
ever?
Make it look like a shingle-style McMansion.
I think they need a trip to Matatuck, but that's okay. Let me, so,
That's better than the finger joke.
so wait. So on point, so A
This is
and
how you know
B,
you're going along, everybody's getting giddy.
yes, I want to move ahead here. A keeps it, moves it, or centers it?
A centers it and moves it back 20 feet. B moves it back 20 feet, keeps it, no, just
Where-
moves it back 20 feet, keeps it where it is.
No, and that one doesn't move it, so we're only
C-
talking about A and B.
yeah,
Board
yeah.
members,
You're either going to allow it to be centered, is what I'm sensing, or keep it where it is.
And what's the
But move
number,
back 20
what's the
feet.
number of feet that it would have to move laterally?
Just take a look at this, it was like 15 feet.
Yeah, it's like 15 or 20 feet.
all right, so what's the,
It doesn't just move the building, it moves the driveway also.
Correct.
I think Rob makes
Yeah,
a
it
good
does.
point, that there was a driveway. So you make a good point, that there was
So
something.
actually, the existing driveway is shown in the
At the
same
end of the
position.
day, it's just which aesthetically
It's aesthetics.
do we prefer?
To me, sitting in the center of the property feels static, and sitting off on the side feels better. It's just, but it's a
Quirkier?
personal preference.
well, you might be right. How about you?
I think moving it any distance to the east
To the east.
is
Stupid?
arbitrary.
Okay, so should we?
Centered, 1 more foot, 12 more feet. I mean, centering it on the property makes it into
Sort of
like a
McMansion-ish.
ornamental.
Okay,
Makes it
I
more of a
honestly
city.
think you're right.
Keep it where it is and
Move it back. I'm on your page. How about you?
Me too.
because that's the
It's up to you
safety.
guys.
All right.
Yeah.
That's why I gave it.
Any other, Charlie, do you have commentary? Any other public comment?
So, Bo, is this enough of a recommendation to, great, we made some progress.
So, John, do you feel you need to continue with the other application?
Well, I don't know. Let's talk about that. Because
Demolition
usually I have to go back to the zoning board of appeals.
No, the other one was the application to resolve under hardship.
Well, I think that
We don't need to do that now.
really go, why don't we keep it all open depending upon what the referral is? It might very well take care
Okay,
of all
well,
of it.
so we're of the understanding that our referral is that we'll accept your proposal. We think it's wise to move it back 20 feet.
And
but
to remove the sheds on the back, that's also part of it.
And that's acceptable, but when they did the historic report, they were later and
Yeah,
stuff.
the condition of all that was shown to
That
be.
I remember distinctly.
Remove the
But then-
extensions on the rear.
Yeah, that's all
Then the
fine.
application has to
20 feet.
remain open because that's part of the demolition. So you have to.
Okay.
Okay, so
I
that's
just
where
leave it
we're
all
at.
open.
Great.
Do we need to close anything? This is a
No,
referral.
he's going to
I'll-
write a report
I'll do a
that's-
report and it'll be
that goes to the ZBA.
Yes, please.
Wait, we have one more discussion item.
Columbus Day.
Columbus Day, I say cancel.
Thank you.
Cancel.
Anybody else? Motion?
Thank you all.
Do I have to make a motion?
Yes.
Motion to cancel the October 14th, 2019 meeting of the ARB.
Second.
In observance of Columbus Day.
No, not in observance,
just
just
cancel it.
canceled.
Second.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Inspiration piece.
great.
Motion to
Motion to
close.
close. Motion to,
I make a motion that we close this meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation on August 12th, 2019. And I'm so sorry for all my sneezing.
I second the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.